Says I'm live on there. That's a good start. Does it say I'm live on there? Yes, it does. Does it say I'm live on there? Okay, that must be one. Hey, Callum, how's it going, buddy? All right. Right, let me get my thing going. Right. We could be back. Good, mate. Well done. Hope you're good. Right then, the Ashby here, motocross and Speedway memories. Tonight I've got a super legend of motocross on, Mr Grant Langston, so we'll sort that out in a minute. I can see you, buddy. I'll bring you in a second. Right, let's bring him in. Let's bring the man in. Mr Langston.
How are you?
How is it?
I'm good. And yourself?
Not too bad, thank you. Thank you very much for doing this, my friend.
No problem.
We'll get out there after and everything. Cool. I'm loving the background there. I can see some beautiful helmets there.
That's actually the World Championship helmet.
Oh, mate. That is beautiful.
That's a little racist now, but anyway.
That is beautiful. Got some. Is this the man cave part of the house, or?
It's my office, but it's still a work in progress.
Okay.
Bit of a nightmare.
Just a few trophies, Grant. Just a few to mess around with, eh?
Yeah, well, I've actually been in this house for 2.5 years, but to be honest, I haven't gone through everything. I was actually going through some stuff last weekend, trying to figure out, what's priority, what's not, and map everything out. Because probably like you, I have a lot of memorabilia.
Yeah, definitely like the memorabilia. That's why it caught my eye straight away. So that's cool that you had your World Championship helmet there as well, and you always had the cool spray jobs, as we called them back then.
Yeah, I miss those days because now a lot of the helmets are a stock design with just some logos and things added on before
That's
they
it.
So it reminds me of the McGrath days. I always thought he had cool looking lids, but times have changed.
Yeah, that's mate. Right, let's get into it then. So, for those that don't know, Grant, what have you been up to since your actual racing days?
Well, my racing career kind of came to an abrupt halt. Wasn't what I was planning at the time. I felt like I was in the peak of my career, and then just had a really freak deal with a melanoma tumor that developed in my left eye. And essentially that is what derailed my career. So I didn't have this sort of retirement plan in action yet. So I think for a few years, I did a couple of things from coaching, getting involved more with the dealership and just the business aspect. I got asked to build and run a race team that was around for a couple of years. And then after that, pretty much was going and broadcasting, as well as working the dealership. So kind of from athlete to businessman.
So how's that all going now? That's so this is Langston Motorsports, isn't it? Is that right?
Correct.
So how's all that going then? And so how long have you been doing that for now then? So that's been a fair while already.
Yeah, in fact, I'm looking at the picture you have. That is from our old shop. We ended up, that was our original shop before we had all the different franchise lines. That was more of just I would say more of a race shop. We appealed to the riders, the racers. We had, as you could see, every type of grip and bar and exhaust pipe, and we did engine tuning and suspension tuning and rebuilding. And it was really sort of a motorsport shop. And originally we were supposed to get the KTM franchise at that location. And then they had management changes and they changed their mind. So that kind of rubbed us the wrong way a little bit at the time. But what happened was with the '08 recession over here, there was actually a dealership not that far away. And I knew the owner a little bit, and he was losing money and said, if someone can turn this around, it's probably you. You should buy it. And so it was a big risk buying something that was losing money at the time, but it was an opportunity to get, because, I don't know how it is in the UK, but the Department of Motor Vehicles, they govern how close dealerships can be together based on area, population, things like that. So you couldn't just go and open if there's a Yamaha dealer on this end of town, you can't go and be a Yamaha dealer on the other end of town. It's impossible.
Oh, interesting.
So it was a territory that was available in our area. Maybe not the most desirable area of California, but, we didn't have a whole lot of choice at that time. So, we got into the negotiations. One of the reasons I was able to afford it is because it was losing money. If it was in a good economy, it would cost a lot more. But we purchased it, and it did, and we lost money. And then we had the shop that you had the picture of. That was at the entrance to the Lake Elsinore motocross track. The dealership we bought was probably 15 miles away. And then we actually confined both stores into a new place that was being built next to the freeway. And we knew being next to the freeway, access and visibility was huge in building it back up. So we kind of confined the two stores into kind of one big mega store that we've actually grown since then even. And we might be doing another growth spurt here in the near future. I can't talk who, how, and why right now.
Okay.
We might be adding some more cool stuff to the store by the end of the year.
Nice. So you've all been working hard then, and it sounds like it's been paying off.
It is, just like anything over here. There's been good times and bad times, and we've seen, the '08 crash, and that really took a lot out of the industry because it wasn't just '08 or even into '09. I remember we were still losing money into 2011, and then things did full circle. We got KTM into the store because the dealership that I bought had all the Japanese brands and then Can-Am and Polaris, but not KTM. When we moved, we were able to then reapply, and KTM came on board with us. And once that came on board, it just kind of took the dealership to that little next level. And so from 2011 on, it's been good. And COVID was crazy. I think a lot of people did not really expect that to happen in our area. People went nuts and just started buying toys, and we crushed it for a few years. And now we knew reality was going to hit and was going to come back down.
Yeah.
And, I would say right now it's been a little soft for our industry over here, not just my store, just in general. A lot of brands, I think, are still working through some backed up inventory they're trying to move. So there's a little disruption. There's been it's not a recession over here, but it's definitely people are watching what they spend. So things have slowed a little bit. But I'm hoping that these things do cycles. So I'm sure it's just a matter of time before we see it picking up again.
Yeah, 100%. It's the same here in the UK as well. I was going to ask you about, obviously, you went into the media side of things. Saw you on the Whiskey Throttle show, and I see you obviously trackside and you do the TV, a bit like that. Do you really enjoy that side of things now, Grant? Because obviously you've been there and done everything, world champion, AMA, multiple champion, etc. So it's good to see class riders there, and they can give the insight from the rider's perspective as well as with the professional media guys as well.
Yeah, I actually started doing TV at the end of 2012 with the AMA Arena Cross series.
Yeah.
The guy at Supercross had said, "Hey, would you like to try it? We don't have a big budget, but we think you could fit in." And I had I feel like I'd always been told from journalists and things like that I gave pretty good interviews or spoke better than most riders. But it never really actually crossed my mind to get on the microphone. But it was never something I thought, I wouldn't do. So when the opportunity arose, I thought, well, I've got to try it. I'm the kind of person, I didn't know how it would feel or if I would enjoy it, hate it, be good at it, suck at it, whatever. I didn't know. So I started with arena cross, and then the opportunity came across to do pro motocross over here. And for me, it was very flattering. I sometimes had to pinch myself and think, I was this kid from Durban, South Africa, and now being asked to be the voice of one of the biggest series in motorsports. So it was definitely an honor. To your point, did I enjoy it? I did at times. What I did realize is when I was traveling as a racer, the whole way there and the way back, all you're thinking about is racing. And then when you're not racing, you do announcing. The traveling sucks. America's a big place. So just to get from where I'm in California to the East Coast is a day's travel. So I didn't like the travel. Obviously, there's some corporate guidelines and restrictions and just things like that I guess maybe you could say takes a little bit of the fun out of it, because you kind of are always a little weary about what should you say. You don't want to offend people. I actually joked and said to friends and that, I said, I'm surprised I last so long without dropping an F-bomb or something. Because it can happen quite easily when you get caught in the moment. But what I did enjoy was when I felt like once the meetings were over and all the behind the scenes stuff that I don't really care for, and I got to sit in the booth and they closed those doors, so it's a noise canceling room and it's dead quiet, and you're getting ready, the anticipation for the gate drop. And then obviously as an announcer, one, I know a lot of these guys personally, so I don't really have favorites or things like that. But what I did realize was when the racing happened and there was good racing, I got into it. I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed trying to explain to people, just in my eyes, like I told everyone, doesn't mean because I said it that it's 100% true, but for me, it was the ability to just express what I think was going through their heads, why they made the pass, maybe why they waited most of the motor, all those kind of things. You are speculating because you haven't had a chance to say to the rider, hey, were you just sitting behind in the whole race and waiting for the 2-lap board? So you're speaking sort of on their behalf without really confirmation. But, I think I know racing, and I think at least most of the time I was right, maybe not all the time. But when there was good battles, because sometimes, there was some years where Tomac was half a minute to a minute out in the lead, and you're digging deep in the bag of tricks, trying to say something. Not a whole lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So, that side of it can be tough. All of a sudden 30-minute plus 2-lap motos feel like an hour. When there was some great battling, I remember they were like, we'd see the 2-lap card. I'm like, whoa, 30 minutes is blown by. So that was fun. I loved calling good battles. For me, it was like I didn't really care who won. I just wanted to see a bunch of guys battle the whole race till the end. So when we got that, it was really cool. But there were some tough ones where you were laboring through, just trying to think of something to say,
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I've been doing some of them as well. What I was going to ask, so obviously you had that retirement. So it literally, when you got diagnosed with that thing with your eye, was that like just literally out of nowhere? There was no...
Yeah. I was fit. I was healthy. Obviously we do fitness tests and physicals and all that, at least once a year. So there was never any sign of anything to be concerned about. And then it literally just came down to, I started getting some blurry vision in my eye. And I got to a point where I'm like, I got to go to an eye specialist because I got a race. I think it was Anaheim that weekend. I'm like, and I was just thinking I got some dirt and scratched the lens, or, just thinking it was something small and not a big deal. And it took a while for them to really figure it out because they can't really biopsy the eye, because the minute they do that, they have to remove it. So it took a while, and then they saw the tumor developing. And then it went from it might be an issue to it's an issue. We got to sort it out now because when they kind of mentioned that your life might depend on it, it kind of was a little shock to the system. Like, wait, what?
Yeah,
And,
well,
didn't expect that. Kind of took the wind out of my sails. And that was a tough time in my life and, just career. I really felt like going in '08, I was riding my best at that time. I had just come off the outdoor title in '07. They had the US Open, which then later on became Monster Cup, but I won that. And, even at the test track, I felt like in '07, Chad Reed kind of had a small edge over me most of the time. And then going to '08, it was nothing between us. One day I might be a 10th quicker than him. The next day he might be a 10th quicker than me, but I felt good. I knew I'd gotten the bike better. I was more comfortable. I was really excited going in that season, really optimistic. Really just wanted to battle with James and Chad that year, who in Supercross I felt like had just been half a step ahead of me in previous years, even though I hadn't raced them a whole lot because they moved up to the 450s before I did. So yeah, it was a tough one, and had to do some soul searching, and I even told people I think I was borderline suffering from depression, because there was nothing else besides racing in my life at that point. So when you take the one thing that is who you are, it's a tough one. You hear people say riders die twice in their lives, once when they stop racing and once when they actually die. So I experienced that, but like anything, you learn to put your big boy pants on and deal with what life gives you. And I had to tell myself, it could be worse. You're still fortunate. You're alive. You're healthy for the most part right now. Other things in life, and not a very religious person in general, but I thought, well, maybe this is just someone telling me it's time for a change. Maybe I would have gotten injured if I kept going, like be in a wheelchair or something that would have been even harder to have dealt with for myself. So I try to look at the silver lining and then try to figure out, what makes me tick. And the first thing that I got was a lot of messages and emails. Hey, could you train my kid? Hey, if I get enough people, would you fly out and do a riding school? So that was a kind of natural fit. And I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life either. So I felt like I was always trying to find what makes you tick, as they say. And I got a chance to do quite a few different things in my life. And now I tell people I'm quite happy living a somewhat boring life of just work, hang out. Me and my son ride on Saturdays usually. This morning I just went for a night. I live, actually Ricky Johnson, I can see his house. He's 3 doors down from me, but we live in an area where there's a lot of cool trails and open land and that. So went on a nice hike this morning, and we got nice spring weather out here at the moment. So it was a beautiful day and just enjoying life, little things, that old saying, sometimes you gotta slow down and smell the roses.
That's the one. like that. So if we take it back then right to the start. So how old were you when you first got a bike? What was the bike, and how did that all come about?
I was 5 years old. As you probably know, rugby is like a religion in South Africa. So when the Springboks were playing international games and that, there was always one of my dad's friends having a braai, barbecue somewhere. So, everyone would get together and it'd be kind of a big festive thing. And one of my dad's friends, well, let me back it up a little bit. My dad actually raced for a little while.
Right.
He said, I think he was getting ready to graduate high school, and on any Sunday came out on the big screen at the movie theaters. And he said every high school kid was like, we're getting a bike. This is the coolest thing ever. And he said motocross just kind of exploded. And, my family's never had money. So he learned how to work on bikes because, back then there wasn't a dealership you could just take your bike to get worked on around the corner. Like dealerships were hard to find. So he said he just started doing it out of his dad's garage, just fixing bikes, whether it was welding something that broke or tearing it down and changing a part or a piston, whatever. So he said he just saved up money and then bought a used bike. And anyway, he went on and kind of raced for fun. Like he said, he never had the funds or the means to kind of go all out, but he did a lot of the local club racing and he enjoyed it. And then when my mom got pregnant with me, he had to sell the bikes to buy a pram. So he had it in his blood. He always loved racing. I remember from a young age watching Formula One and MotoGP on the weekends. So back to the rugby story, we were at my dad's friend's place, and he had raced as well for a while, stopped, but he had a little QR50 in the garage, the old Honda QR50 that he had got for his son. Well, his son apparently had a crash on it and was scared of it. So every time we went over there, I'm like, "Hey, Uncle Rob, I want to ride that bike." And they're always like, "Oh, we've had a few beers, but next time before we get going, like, I'll take you. We'll teach you how to ride." So next time came around, I'm like, "Hey, Uncle Rob, you promised you're going to take the bike out and we could ride." So he's like, "Okay, next time." I'm like, "You said that last time." And long story short, I think I drove him and my dad up the wall so much. They were like, "Let's just get this kid on the bike so he'll shut up." And we went to this kind of abandoned BMX track and showed me how to ride. And from my memories, we have some photos, but according to my family, they couldn't get me off the bike. In fact, they loaded in the back of the truck going home, and I was still sitting on it while I was strapped, like wind in the hair, back to the house. So I think it was definitely one of those, rode once and got hooked. And then my dad ended up buying that bike, like really cheap. And we went to a couple local practice tracks. And then my dad was like, "Do you want to race?" I was like, "Yeah." So I went to the first race and got lapped twice, I think. It was pretty pathetic. Funny story, they were watering the track, so there was a hose pipe across the track, and I stopped. And the guy watering is like, "No, you can go." And my dad's running next to the track going, "Go!" And I'm like, "Dad, you would get really upset at me if I rode over the hose pipe." And he's like, "Go race!" Like, and I didn't listen well enough at riders meeting. I thought all I heard was, if you see the yellow flags, you're not allowed to pass. So when the riders fell, I came up on a yellow flag. I waited for them to get up and get going, so I didn't pass him on the ground. So needless to say, it was not the most desirable start to a career you could ask. But somehow my dad got home and convinced my mom that it was all because all these kids were on new PW50s and I was on an old QR50. So for Christmas, I ended up, Santa brought me a PW50. And then that following year was the first real year of racing. And I think that was 88.
88.
On Pee Wee 50s. And then I kind of really progressed. Motocross was still actually pretty strong in those days. And I remember I went from, novice, I think it was like near the front. And then the next race I won, and then I won again. I got moved up. And then intermediate, I think I won the first race, won again, and then moved to expert. So in 1 year, I went from novice to expert. And then I think I won like the last race or two in the expert class. And then, I was off to the races. From there, kind of dominated 50 amateur motocross. And then we went to PW80s and then KX60 and then big bikes.
Wow. I got a couple of these of you.
Yeah, that's me. My dad had a friend. If you look at my jersey and my helmet, it says Mercorama. One of my dad's friends had a Mercedes dealership. And my dad convinced him to sponsor me. I don't think he got much mileage out of it, but it got us gas money to go to the next race. That's for sure. Nice. Yep, PW80. After moving up, still sponsored by Mercorama. Now, there's my dad yelling.
Love that picture with the dad as well.
Yeah.
So so you obviously went on to the 60s, like you said, 80s, CC and all that. What sort of stage did you think, hold on, I'm like got some serious ability here, I could do this as a career? Where did it come in that you were going to try to go to Europe, etc.?
I don't know where I thought I could make a career out of it, but somewhere my aunt has, and she actually lives in England now, but she used to have the old camcorders and try to record all my races. And I won the race, and they get me up on the podium with the microphone, and who do you want to thank? And they said, what do you want to be when you're older? And I said, a world champion. And I think I was 7. And you can hear some of the parents like, oh, that's cute.
Like you're going to be an astronaut or something. Yeah.
I was young, naive, and, didn't really know what was going on in the world, just in my own bubble. But I told everyone at age 7 that I was going to be a world champion. And I think as I got older, I started understanding how motocross works, and this you got to go to Europe or America, and a lot of the reason I was sort of kind of focused on going to Europe was right at the time when I was getting on the bigger bikes, probably around 60 and 80s, was when Albertine was in Europe, and my dad had a chance to talk to his dad, and Tony Albertine kind of was like, hey, let me tell you some things, and he really kind of broke it down like, hey, it's great to have dreams, but it's not as easy as you think it is. And I remember he told my dad, unless your kid can dominate on any bike, on any track, on any day, don't even bother going overseas, and it got to a point where in 97 I was meant to race the schoolboy class. Well, at the first race, it was muddy and they shortened the track, but I literally lapped the field. And my dad's like, we're not doing this. So I got pushed up to the 125 seniors, and you had to be 18 to race seniors or get special dispensation. And I was 14. So a lot of parents objected, and Motorsport South Africa approved it. They said, we've only done this, I think, twice. I think it was for Robbie Herring and Greg Albertine. They said, but 14 was pretty young. So there was a lot of parents that were not happy about it. And like my dad said, what are you afraid of? My son's going to beat your kid who's in his 20s. And so when I moved up, I quickly became probably the most hated guy in South African motocross, as in there were people that liked me and supported me, but most of the competition hated me. And I remember walking past pits, hearing dads yell at the kid, you let that little punk snot-nosed kid beat you again. I'm done. We're selling the bikes. So they were out to get me too.
Yeah.
So toughen up. I remember.
I was going to say, toughen up. Yeah. So it was a good thing, really.
These guys were intentionally trying to take me out. And I came off the track one day and I was crying to my dad. And he's like, why are you crying? And I said, it's your fault. These guys hate me and they're all out to get me. And I'm like, I just come around the first turn. I've got guys just crashing into me from every angle. And it was really, as a kid, you get upset, And it's like, so what are you afraid of? I said, well, they're much bigger than me. If I take them out, they're going to, beat me up. He goes, you sort it out in the track. When you cross the finish line, pull up next to me. I'll handle the rest. And I did. I returned a favor to a few riders as I was picking up my speed as well. And then I became faster than them. So I could get a bad start and come through. And a couple of times I could have just passed them and gone, but I waited and made my intentions clear. Don't mess with me. And I just pulled up next to my dad and he handled everything else.
I love that.
So then I didn't win the championship for a couple of reasons. I had a mechanical one day and missed one race, which they had drops, meaning you could cancel your worst race. But I came up just short. But basically, I had a deal with my dad and Honda in South Africa at the time that if I dominated the rest of the second half of the year, the last 4 nationals, that they would, between Honda and my dad and the sponsors, they were going to pay the expenses to get me to go overseas and do some events to try get noticed.
Wow, that is mad. Oh, because I've been listening so intently, there's a few people have been piping up saying stuff. Someone said, get GL back in the booth. Patrick Corrigan, I know him. He's out in America at the moment, but USA. Great job, Lee and Grant. Anthony Mitchell. Hi, Grant. How is your eye now?
Medically, it's good. I actually had my eye examined 6 months ago, and they feel pretty confident that the tumor won't return. But from the radiation and the surgery I had, I have permanent vision damage. So that's why I was never really able to come back. So I can drive okay. I can even ride okay. But because it's just blurry enough and just doesn't have that kind of pinpoint accuracy to see the rocks and the holes and the bumps, especially when you're going fast, everything's coming at you really quickly. Trying to compete at the highest level, I tried, and I crashed a lot, and that kind of, it sucked because I realized that was it. I tried and I knew it was over, but now I'm able to just ride and enjoy life. We go trail riding sometimes. Like it rained here last week, so we did some trail riding. I go to the local tracks with my kid and friends of ours. We joke Saturdays for the boys, so we go out and do ride. But again, I'm riding on tracks that, a lot of them here are well prepped. You go in the morning, they're watered, they're kind of smooth. You feel like a hero for a few laps. Go home.
No, I'm pumped.
Yeah, because I get these people go, dude, you still got it. I'm like, I appreciate it, but what you saw out there is nothing compared to what the real level is at a proper race, weekend. Whether it's a GP or a national, those tracks get rough, and you have to have perfect vision, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what age were you then when you got to actually all get it put in place to come over to Europe then?
That was in 97. There was a break in our South African schedule, and we were trying to figure out, which race is the best one to try and go get noticed. And it turned out that it was the 125cc European round in Ashby, Italy. So we went over there, and I was kind of a little bit bummed because in qualifying, I was second. And I just remember a lot of these Europeans, they had no idea who this dude was, because I was at the top of the leaderboard for a while. And people were tripping out trying to figure out who this guy they've never heard of was that was on top. But I qualified second in my group, I think behind, I wanted to say it was Thomas Traversini maybe, or Fabrizio Dini. It was one of the Italians on a Husky. And I think in the other group, it was Sorby, Boniface, those guys. But then it rained that night, and Sunday in the mud coming from South Africa, I was pathetic. I think I got 14th overall, but I fell both motos, and it sucked because I knew I had better pace than that, and that was your one time to show everyone what you could do. But somehow I caught the eye of Harry Everts, and because he was there working with some young talent, and they were starting a team, and I forget all the details, but I think they actually got funding from the Belgian government for young development riders. And I basically somehow got to get on that team, even though I wasn't from Belgium. But that Steve Ramon was on there.
Yeah, I remember Steve Ramon. Yeah,
had another rider who ended up getting injured, Damien Denil. And basically they said, hey, this is what we have, but you're going to have to you're going to have to purchase some bikes of your own. We don't have enough bikes to get the whole team through the year. And, in Europe, they have international events. So they're like, you need a couple 250s as well. And so thankfully, I've always had some people that have always had my back, stepped up. In fact, a kid that I beat a lot in mini bikes, he was a really good rider, but he tended to finish second to me all the time. And his dad and my dad didn't like each other at the time. And he was actually one of the ones that stepped up and bought me 2 bikes and said, this kid needs a chance, and I'll, I want to help. And
nice.
My dad's like, I don't know if this guy's playing me for a fool, if he's being he just said he wants to help. And I'm like, weary, but yeah, he did. So basically my competition chipped in, some sponsors helped, and we went to Europe and made the choice to go straight into GPs for 1998.
Wow. Because I think I messaged you the other day about it, saying that I watched, sure it was the 99 season on YouTube. And just remember you sort of just pretty much like bursting onto the scene. All of a sudden you were just out at the front, and it was like same sort of thing as you probably said earlier. It was like, who is this kid? super
Yeah.
fast. It's like, where did he come from?
Well, so I'll back it up just real quick. My
Yeah.
first trip ever overseas was on 80s. I went to Desert Martin for the
Oh,
British Schoolboy Championship in England.
Ireland. Yeah. Ah, right.
That was kind of interesting. So Kawasaki South Africa coordinated with Kawasaki UK, and it was pretty cool. We ended up in the Mackenzie's motorhome, and
Yeah, that was fun.
Big Billy and my dad, they hit it off, and
Yeah.
I got there and was told like Billy Mackenzie is the guy you got to beat. He's the man this year. And I didn't know what to expect either. I get there and there's all these campers, and I'm like, oh, racing over here is a whole nother level. Like, it was intimidating. And but I remember seeing the track and I'm like, oh, this track is awesome. I got a feeling I'm gonna do well. And I pretty much smoked everyone there. And that was fun. My dad ended up punching out Michael Lafferty's old man. So that was another story. I guess I took out Lafferty. Funny story. I saw Lafferty at Austin MotoGP 2 years ago.
No
And I
way.
was talking to Neil Hodgson, and he goes, "Hey, have you ever met Michael Lafferty?" And I look, and I was about to say something, and he goes, "Do you remember Desert Martin '95?" I go, "Please don't tell me it was your dad." He goes, "Yep, it was my dad."
Brilliant.
Me and
What's the
old
chances?
Lafferty, we had a chuckle about it. I said, "Hey, please make sure you tell your dad on behalf from the Langston family. There's no hard feelings. We hope wish you all the best. Emotions got the best of the old men." So yeah, we had a good little chuckle about it. But that was my first taste of overseas racing, and that was '95, and then '96 again with Kawasaki. I went to the US. Because a lot of people said, how come you never did Loretta Lynn's? I go, we couldn't afford to fly over and do a qualifier and then fly back to do
Back
Loretta.
again,
So the biggest race you could just show up and enter was the World Minis in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I won my qualifiers. I went down the main event, probably just a little too eager, but I ended up third, battling with Pastrana and all the hot kids over here at the time. So I definitely shown people that it wasn't necessarily just the speed, but there was ability to get some results. So '97, like I said, Ashby was a disappointment as far as the results went, but I was kind of surprised that Harry Everts thought he saw something that he liked, because I'm like, I got 14th. There's at least 10 other guys he should be looking at, right? So get that deal done with the Harry Everts team on Kawasaki's. We had help from like Olin's. They had an engine builder in-house who did a decent job. But for some reason, I felt like I went backwards at the beginning. I think I made the mistake of trying to be too much like Stefan Everts in the sense of, because with Harry being around, I got to ride around Stefan. So to me, that was really cool. Like, who better to learn from than Stefan Everts? But Stefan was one of these guys in the off season. He never went for speed. He would literally fill up his fuel tank to the very, very top and stand up almost the entire time for like 55-minute motos until he ran out of fuel, but doing it at 80% pace. He was building a foundation. So I was trying to copy him, and I realized I was getting stronger as a kid because I needed endurance at that time. But I lost that raw speed of the qualifying sprint laps. And that's where the Europeans have always been really good. Even when they've come to the US, so many times in time qualifying, they're the fastest because they just, you grew up having to be able to lay down a heater. And so I didn't even, the first race was in Brazil in '98. I qualified for that, but I don't feel like it really counts because there was only 20 Europeans or 25 Europeans out of the 40. So you only had to be the best of the rest to make the main. But I didn't. The first European round was Belpuig in Spain. With first reserve, didn't qualify. The next round was Foxhill, and I was 44th overall, and didn't qualify. Just no excuses. Wasn't fast enough. And I still remember this moment. I've mentioned it a couple of times before, but I remember sitting on the bank at Foxhill's by the pit side. And the gate dropped, and they used to have the music that pumped you up, and the place was rocking, the crowd was cheering, and I just started crying. And I sat there just with my head, and I was crying, and all of a sudden, I feel a tap on my shoulder. Harry Everts came and sat next to me. And he just looked at me and he was like nodding. He had his little cigarette hanging out his mouth. Just kind of grinning like. And I said, what? And he goes, don't let it bother you. You're going to figure it out. And I'm like, Harry, I can't even qualify. Like this is embarrassing. And he said, don't worry about it. Stick with what you're doing. We're making progress. You're going to figure it out. And he goes, I believe in you. And I said, really? And he goes, I really believe you're going to be a world champion one day. And I went, come on, Harry, like don't patronize me. Just tell me I'm okay. But I didn't qualify. And here's a guy saying, I believe you will be world champion one day. And it stuck in my head. And after that race, I qualified. Then I started qualifying better. And then towards the end of the season, I scored points. And I remember in France, the French GP, second motor, I finally got a good start. And I finished 8th. And I still remember me, my dad, and my uncle, we were celebrating like we had just won the world championship. But it was my first ever top 10 in the moto. And it just felt amazing. Like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. And from that moment on, the phone started ringing. And it was a cool feeling to have people saying, we want you. Yeah. And ultimately led me to signing with Kees van der Ven on KTM out of Holland. We just weighed up the options as far as financially. You know, again, we were struggling. We were going and doing all those little international races, really hoping to get some start money and money to live on. You know, it was only my winnings. I had no salary, so it was only winnings that was keeping me, my dad, and my uncle alive. Because my uncle at this point had come over and he was my mechanic. So signed with Kees van der Ven, moved to Holland from Belgium, going in 99. And I still remember talking to my dad, and we kind of went back and forth because we're like, it's KTM. Like, it's not really proven, especially in the 125 class at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And I still remember my dad goes, well, there's 2 ways to look at it. If you don't win or you struggle, they're going to blame the bike. If you do win, you look really good. But thankfully, when I went to KTM or started working with KTM, what I respect about those guys is they threw everything at it. Like, they were adamant on trying to build the fastest, best bike at the time. So when I got off the Kawi onto the KTM, I'm like, dude, this thing's a rocket ship. Reliability was a bit of an issue at first, but it was fast. And so that was kind of inspiring. And then, like you were talking about the 99 season, I kind of seemed like it came out of nowhere, but I was actually riding pretty good at the beginning of the year, but then I broke my navicular on my right wrist.
Yeah, I can see, yeah.
And, you know, that sucks because now the season's just started for a while. And
just held you back a bit, yeah.
So then pretty much what happened was I was trying to almost race myself back into shape. So once my fitness kind of came back where I needed it, then I think you started seeing the results, you know, top 5 podium. And then Germany, where I got my first win, was really like a dream of a weekend for me. I hadn't even ran in first place. The closest I'd been was 10, 15 seconds off Coyote in 3rd place in Slovenia. And then all of a sudden, Germany, I mean, I was fastest in every practice. In qualifying, I was over 2nd quicker than anyone. And then pretty much dominated both motos. And it was a trip. I couldn't believe that there were races I felt like I gave every ounce that I had in me to get like an 8th. And then the weekend, it felt like I wasn't even trying. It just happened. And it was just, it's weird how it goes sometimes, but that was a hard one to swallow. And I remember talking with Paul Malin, and he goes, and then the next weekend you got 0 points. I'm like, I know. Like, things are weird sometimes, but that win, I think, you know, for anyone, it does a lot for the mind.
Belief.
You know, and then people then start putting you on that kind of pedestal of, oh, he's a Grand Prix winner. And I finished out the season with some decent results, but I definitely was still a little inconsistent at that time. And then unless you want to change the subject, going into 2000,
Okay.
Kurt Nickel and KTM were starting the factory 125 team.
Mhm.
I always give Kurt crap about this because I heard from one of the people in the meetings. They were like, "What about Langston?" And Kurt said, "Yeah, he's got talent, but I need someone that can win a world title. You know, that's consistent and all that." And so I heard about this months down the road. But anyway, what was cool is Kurt made sure that I got everything that KTM had available to their riders was given to me as well. So I was basically on the Champ KTM team, but getting full factory support.
Yeah.
Whereas my teammate Gunnarsson was getting close, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
And obviously I fixed the consistency issues.
Yep.
2000 was a great year. I came in, without any injuries for a change. Had a year on the KTM. We'd done more development in the off season. I think having Dob and Caps on the factory team, there was, you've now got 3 different riders giving opinions and sharing information. So it was cool. And I saw the 132. I'm pretty sure that was at the beginning of the year in 2000. I did Hawkstone, won that. Cool. And
Someone mentioned it the other day to me, Grant. They was like, I remember watching Grant. He turned up at Hawkstone and smoked everyone. I was like, yeah.
Kind of tracks, a little bit sandy loom. It actually reminds me of a track that we grew up around in South Africa, that that kind of dirt and layout. And then the 132, I think that was from Canada Heights. I did the opening.
Yeah, that one is. Yeah. I recognize it. Yeah, Rosa.
So that was all Kurt's doing. He's like, we're testing in England. Oh, by the way, you're going to race Canada Heights. But as a kid, I was up for everything. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And so again, had a good off season coming into the GPs, and was very consistent that year. Obviously, I think I won a lot of the races, like that one, Falkensward. I just knew that was a track I was going to win at. Kind of like Finland. There were a few tracks that had that kind of, European, Belgium, Dutch type soil. And funny enough, when I got to Europe, I was horrendous in the sand. Like, and then all of a sudden, from living in Belgium and Holland, I turned my weakness into my strength.
I think this is that looks fast cross potentially, is it? In Italy, yeah.
Cross 2000. I was 1B because McGrath was 1A.
Oh, brilliant. How did you get on there? Because that I remember that was super cool back in the day. Like, they had like all the top riders, the Americans, everyone was there, wasn't they?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, they put us on a bitchin' hotel overlooking Lake Como. The owners owned furniture stores and restaurants. They took us to their restaurant every day, and I just remember going, this food's sensational. My dad's like, stop with the desserts, because I was eating all these Italian desserts, and I'm looking around at all the other riders, and they're all just eating like protein and veggies. And season's over.
I got a cool picture of you at Fox Hill, actually. There's a picture from Fox Hill as well.
Yep, that's Fox Hill, 99.
So I think I told you that's my actually where I live, Swindon. It's my hometown, Fox Hill as well. So seen a lot of the GPs there in the 90s. Was great days for sure.
Yep. Donations as well.
Yeah, donations as well. That one was a bit of a mess. But
I was really upset because I should have been picked for Team South Africa and got looked over. In my opinion, it was purely politics. And then so we just went to go watch. And when I was watching it, I'm like, I'm not that bummed to be watching right now. It's this nightmare. But it was really cool to see everyone, and especially what Everts did to the field was something you don't see very often.
No. I was going to ask you about the nations. What was that like for you? I've got some. Must have been special for you to represent your country as a young lad. You could have only dreamed of stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. My dream was, truthfully, to try and help get South Africa on the overall podium. I think our best shot. Well, the thing that sucked is we never really had 3 strong riders. And the once or twice we did, someone was injured or having surgery or something. But in 2000 at Saint Jean d'Angely, Albertine was retiring, but he was still obviously really fast. And I just won the world championship. And then Colin Dugmore was the third rider on the team. And then Dugmore broke his wrist right before the event. And we had Ryan Hunt came out.
He rode Britain a lot, yeah.
Yeah, he raced in Europe a lot. And but unfortunately, it was hot at Saint Jean d'Angely, and he just faded. He wasn't used to that intensity for 30 minutes. But we came so close to being on the podium. I think we were tied fourth, but got fifth. That's the qualifying race. Ironically, I knew Travis personally by this point because no one knows this, well, except South Africans, but in 95, he actually came to South Africa and raced on 80s. And we had our first battle in 95. Then we battled in 96 at World Minis. And then here we are lined up. And he's the wonder kid, from America, national champion. And I'm the other kid who's world champion. And we had a great ding-dong battle in the qualifying. And
didn't you bang bars and stuff? Because I remember seeing it.
I remember talking to Travis because he's funny. Man, that was awesome. And I said to him, I said, look, sorry, that I smashed you in a qualifier. I said, but at that age, I just wanted to win so bad. Everything, whether it was practice, qualifying, almost to a fault, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I got injured more than I should have. But like I told him, I said, it was an ego thing. I said, if I got 39th in that qualifier, I would have been okay as long as you were 40th.
Love that. You got to have that special competitive edge, and that's what made you the success you were.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Then that was
got to have that edge.
07. I was hoping we are going to have a good team with me, Swanepoel, and Rattray. Then Rattray got injured. Me and Ricky had a great battle in the MX1 qualifier on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I think at the end of the outdoor season, luck was on my side, but I ran out of luck before Budds Creek because for the first time in my, I think, entire life, I've never crashed 4 times in one race in my life. And I went down in the start, then I got collected with someone else, then I crashed by myself, and then I fell over. And I remember picking up my bike going, I know I've crashed twice in one race before, maybe 3, but never 4, never, ever, ever.
Wow.
And then Swanepoel crashed and broke his ankle. Avis had a mechanical, and I just went, because we qualified second behind the US after Saturday qualifying. And I was like, we're going to get on the podium.
Yeah.
Put South Africa on the map. We're going to get on the podium. And then Sunday was just a disaster.
Shit show. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about what riders did you have? Did you get like the magazines in South Africa from the Americans and all that? Who were your riders that you looked up to and stuff like that? And
well, first and foremost, Greg Albertine. And I think what it was with Greg is I got to meet him when I was a kid because he came back in, I'm trying to remember the years now, I think at the end of 91, which was his first year in Europe. And he did like this international race at the end of the year because there were these international events where they'd try and get some Europeans over and some Americans. And I got to watch. I remember I was excited. I'm like, this is the guy that got like 10th in the world championship. Like, oh, I want to watch. And so, of course, I went and got his autograph after the race and talked to him a little bit. And then he made it seem like you could be a kid from South Africa and make it to the elite level and be a world champion, multi-time world champion. So I think Greg, because Greg and I are good friends now. He actually lives not that far from me here in California. But I said to Greg, whether you realize it or not, I said, you inspired that next generation, because that group, I'm in that group that's like about 10 years younger than him. And so we were, kids that were just diehard fanatics of the sport with dreams. And I said to Greg, you made it seem tangible. Like you can do it. It's doable. And so Greg was always my hero, my idol, the guy I looked up to. because I still remember when I'm in Europe and I'm writing for Harry Everts and I'm talking to Stefan, and he's like, "Who did you look up to?" And I'm going, "Oh, Greg Albertine is the man." And I'm going on and on about Greg, and Stefan just looks at me dead in the eye and goes, "I don't like him." And I was like, "Oh, that's you know me, I'm just rubbing it in." I'm like, "Is that because he kicked your ass the last couple of years?"
I think his relaxed personality and everything. I think that got to Everts a bit, didn't it? Mentally, maybe. I think because he was like a robot. And
yeah, Greg is very mentally strong, and I don't know if that's just part of being like South African coming over. You're always coming up against hurdles, and you're the underdog all the time. You know, so you have to really. You feel like saying no one else really believes in me, so I have to believe in me. You know, you got like that old saying, you got to prove yourself. You know, you can tell everyone that you're good. You can tell them how many South African championships you have. No one cares once you leave South Africa, right? Yeah. So, yeah. As far as looking up to, I looked up to also Damon Bradshaw. I loved his style and his attitude and his just raw talent. Jean-Michel Bale. So because that was when I was really into racing, and I knew didn't know them personally, but I knew a lot about them. And you were asking about magazines, so we got like the British Dirt Bike Rider in South Africa,
Dirt Bike Rider, yeah,
Motocross Action and that. But I still remember we'd go to the mall because my dad couldn't afford to buy the magazines because they were pricey by the time they got there, shipping and that. So he would literally read the magazines front to back. And I just cruising the mall, getting a slushie or play an arcade game or something. And then I remember if there's something he really liked, he would buy the magazine the following month when they were blowing them out, like super cheap. And then he would keep the article that he wanted to read up on, whether it was tuning or suspension settings. You know, there was always informational stuff.
It was,
I always remember on the British Dirt Bike magazine in the middle, it always had the big pull out.
Yeah, posters, yeah.
So in my room, I had posters of Jamie Dobb, Carl Nunn, Paul Malin, this goes on and on.
Yeah.
In the following year, I moved to Europe and I'm lined up next to the same guys.
Yeah.
There's a bit of it blows your mind. The first GP was Brazil 98, and I saw Coyote, and I said to my dad, I'm going to go get his autograph. And my dad grabbed him by the shirt. He goes, his autograph? You need to beat him. And I'm like, that's a good one. No, I'm going to get his autograph. My dad got pissed at me. He's like, no, you don't put these guys on a pedestal. Like, they're your rivals now. I'm like, no, he's way better than I am. So it changed so fast. But my room was full of posters from all the American and European riders. So I was very in tune with who was doing what. Obviously, because even in British Dirt Bike Rider, they would always give you all the updates on what was happening in the British Championship. And there were, over the years, South Africans that had gone over from, Cooper, obviously Robbie, Ryan Hunt, and others. So you kind of wanted to see, hey, how the South African boys doing over there. So yeah, at that point in my life, that was before internet and just before girls. So my only focus was racing and studying everything I could.
Yeah, really cool. Really cool. So when you were obviously in the GPs, obviously you won the world title, which was obviously amazing. Then what was your plan to go to America fast, or did you have just offers and then decided to go? Or
so sometimes I feel a little bit bad of how I've described it a little bit, but I said it before, like I just wanted to get out of Europe, and it wasn't entirely exactly how I felt. What happened is when we got to Europe, we were broke. The weather, you get there and it's off season, so it's winter. The weather was terrible. I mean, I'm trying to ride in ice and snow. I've never experienced anything. So you have no money, no friends. You're sucking. Like everywhere we went, I was slower than my teammate and everyone else in the beginning. You go to the store, you're trying to figure out what is this. You can't read what you're like, what am I buying? You know, I don't speak Flemish or German or Italian or French. So in the beginning, I got very homesick, and I kind of felt like I just didn't want to be in Europe. And then the reality is in '99, I got to Holland, started to make some money, got your own little home, you know, adjusting, you know, at least Dutch is similar to Afrikaans. So sometimes reading labels and that, you can make out what it says. And obviously in Holland, almost everyone speaks English. So in 2000, early 2000, ironically, I think it was after like 3 rounds of the GPs, 3 or 4 rounds. In fact, I'll have to look it up, but we were driving to Croatia, and I think it was round 5. So there'd been 4 rounds. And I even had a cell phone now because I could afford one. So my cell phone rings. And back then, I used to get excited when the phone rang. Now I'm like, if I don't know the person, I give it the ring.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I have no idea who this is. I'm like, hello?
Yeah.
Grant? Yeah? Hey, it's Mitch Payton, Pro Circuit Kawasaki.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, hey, Mitch. He goes, hey, I've been keeping an eye on your results. Pretty impressive. And I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
And driving, and he's doing one of these, like, and I'm like, you know, like, and then I go, and Mitch is like, would you be interested in racing for me in America next year? And I was young and nervous that I didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm like, can you hold on a sec? I'm like, hey, Dad, he wants to know if I would be interested in riding from next year. My dad's like, so I'm like, yeah. And that got the ball rolling.
Wow.
So basically what happened is, so then in 2000, I got to be honest, I started enjoying Europe, and I had friends, and I knew people, and I knew the streets a little bit, and I knew places to eat and where I like going, and not, you know, just started
just getting a bit more comfortable. Yeah.
But by that point, I think I had already mentally moved to America. You know, like it was, that's what my hero did, and I want to follow in his footsteps, and I want to take on, you know, Supercross and motocross, and also it was believed at the time, you know, you were hearing about the amount of money the Americans were making, and I'm like, that's a lot of money compared to even Europe. What I've noticed is in America, the real top guys, the top team leader on, say, all the factory teams, they're making really good money, and then it drops off quickly. Whereas in Europe, I feel like there's quite a few guys making good money. So it's, the wealth is spread out a little bit more in Europe. Whereas in America, it's just really on a 3-4 guys making mega money, and then there's a drop, and then there's another 10 guys making good money, and then there's another big drop. So I think it was a combination of the American lifestyle, Supercross, money, and a challenge. Because at one point, I remember talking with Kurt Nickel, because he caught wind that I was in negotiations with Kawasaki. And Kurt, you know, came to me and was like, he goes, honestly, if you want to defend your one, well, this is early in the year. I hadn't even won the title, but he's like, if you want to defend your title next year and run the #1 plate in 125s, I'll have a contract for you. You want to move to 250s? I have a contract for you. You want to go to America? I'll have a contract for you. Kurt's like, no matter what, you're not leaving KTM if I have any say in this. And I've always loved and respected Kurt. At any opportunity, I would have a jab at him about not consistent enough to win a championship. Cool story. And I got it, Grant. Like, I'm like, I'll never drop it. But no, Kurt and I really enjoyed working with Kurt. You know, sometimes ex-riders don't always make the best managers. But Kurt knew how to be a manager on the corporate end, and also how to keep riders happy and motivated and all that. And I think if it wasn't for Kurt, I honestly would have been on a Pro Circuit Kawasaki in 2001 instead of KTM. But they, you know, he laid his cards out. Like, I need you. Like, I need you on my team. And if I sign you, I've got Red Bull that's prepared to step up and, give us the financial boost we need in America.
Mhm.
Because ironically, at the Austrian Grand Prix, Mr. Mateschef, who owned Red Bull, was invited by Heinz Kindergartner and the KTM guys.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was no good Austrian rider. So all the fans were cheering for KTM riders.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really like that track that much. Too choppy for my liking. And with no linkage, it didn't do us any favors. But I somehow managed to go 1-1. And, we were doing 40-minute plus 2-lap motos back then with the GP. So there were a lot of boring races. Like, I got to imagine for some fans, it got really boring. But at Austria, everyone kind of bunched up at the end of the race. And next thing, me and Brown and Segui and Dobb, and there was like a handful of us swapping paint. And the crowd was going nuts. And I went 1-1. And I think that's when Dietrich was like, that kid has to be on the team, and I'll put in a bunch of money. I don't know the exact details behind closed doors, but I do know that the Red Bull money had something to do with me signing with Red Bull. I mean, with KTM.
Yeah.
They gave me a good offer. They had first right of refusal, so we showed them the Kawasaki offer, and they matched it. And then when I was getting ready to sign, I'm like, oh, I need a pickup truck. Can you get me one of those? And Kurt's like, handwrite, yes, we will get you a pickup truck. And I'm like, cool, fine, done deal.
Sweet.
And so yeah, it was. There's always those behind the scenes negotiations and back and forth. And I didn't have an agent. My dad was my agent. And I still remember. Speaking of funny stories, I didn't have the heart to call Mitch to say no. Like I was having anxiety over it because I'm like,
I was just about to ask you about that as well.
I'm like, this guy tried really hard to get me, and I'm so flattered. And now I'm telling Mitch Payton no, like it was really difficult for me. At the end of the day, I was still just a 17-year-old kid at the time, trying to not offend anyone. It sucks when people want you and you have to say no. It's an incredible feeling to have to be one, but someone's going to get let down. So I faxed a letter to Mitch, and took me a while to write it out because I didn't really know what to say. But I do remember saying, thank you so much, means so much. You got the ball rolling, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, I said, P.S., I hope one day I do get to ride for you. And then a few years later, mine and KTM's relationship was getting a little bit sour. And, I remember talking to Kurt, and he said, is there something I can do? I said, can you be team manager over here? And he said, no, I'm in charge of KTM Worldwide Racing. Like, I'm the big boss, but I can't be there all the time. And I just said, look, I don't like some of the decisions and directions. And I don't feel like the American side of KTM wanted me like the European side did. But I'm in America, right? So I just got to a point. I said to Kurt, look, they gave me a really good offer, too, to ride the 254 stroke when they were coming out. That's what they wanted me to do. And I said to Kurt, thanks, but no thanks. And he said, where are you going? And I said, I don't know. And he said, you're not turning down that offer unless you got something planned. And I said, I promise you, I don't have anything. And I had a good relationship with Jeff Fox, the owner of Parts Unlimited, Thor. And we'd been riding with Thor gear. And Jeff called me and he goes, hey, Langston, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I said, but I need to change. I said, the honeymoon's over. And I said, I need to move on. And he obviously also was heavily involved with Pro Circuit at the time. And he said, why don't you call Mitch Payton? And I'm like, I don't know if that guy will answer my phone call, because in 01 and that, there was a lot of tension between the two teams. Me and Mike Brown were smashing each other. Mechanics threw swings at one of the races. Like, there was a lot of tension.
I remember,
In fact, after one of the races, I saw the whole Pro Circuit team in the lobby getting ready to leave. And I walked up and I said, hey, because it was Washougal, and the next race was cross country at Millville, Minnesota. And I said, hey, guys, tell Mitch, I said, don't waste your time and money sending the truck to Millville because I'm going to kick your rider's ass that weekend. So I said, just be forewarned. And they told Mitch what I said, because Mitch told me, he goes, you made my blood boil. And what pissed me off even more is he goes, you went and dominated that weekend. And but anyway, so now I'm telling Jeff Fox, I'm like, Mitch ain't going to answer my phone call. He goes, stand by. I'm going to give him a ring. Not even 2 minutes later, I get a phone call from the area code of where Pro Circuit is. So I'm like, hello? Very serious. GL? Yeah? It's Peyton. What's up, Mitch? You looking for a ride? Yeah. You need to be in my office in 30 minutes. I'm like, it takes like 40. He goes, I'll see you in 30. And I'm like, ugh. I jump in my truck and I hightail it to Corona, and I get on the phone with my dad. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm on my way to Pro Circuit. My dad's like, are you going to sign a deal? I'm like, I don't know. There isn't a deal. Like, I'm just going there. And the reason was they were just about to sign their last rider. They literally, he had a contract on his table they were supposed to sign with Brandon Jessamine. He said, but if I can have you, I'm going to do a really shitty move and tell Jessamine. He's like, I've never done that. Told someone they have a deal and then revoke it. He goes, but I'll make it right with him later. And went up there and just put pen to paper. And I called my dad. I said, I said, I don't want to get bullied, or intimidated. I said, can you come and be the tough guy, like an agent? And ended up signing with Mitch. Literally a handwritten, like one page on a page out of the printer, and you just start writing. And we all signed it and said, we'll make it official. And then right when we're getting ready to leave, Mitch opens his drawer and he pulls out this fax. And he points to the bottom line where it says, one day, I hope to ride for you. And I'm like, you kept that? And he even goes, I'm a little bit like a chick when it comes to this stuff. And he goes, but I'm just glad it's happening. So
that's brilliant.
It was kind of a cool story. And riding for Mitch was some of probably the best years of my professional career. We worked hard, but we had fun doing it. And it was fun.
Everyone always, even in Europe as well. Was that a thing with you as well? You obviously all knew about Pro Circuit. Obviously, everyone knew that Mitch Payton was almost like this godfather of motocross in America.
Yeah. Well, when I went to Europe, it was almost the same thing. Hey, if you could ride for Rinaldi, you should. If you could ride for De Groot, you should. Or Dave Grant. Or, there were certain people that you just saw a history of producing champions. And so, basically with my KTM contract, I was in the 250, which is now 450 class, and just struggled on that bike bad. And then, so I basically had to take a step back. And I'd also never ridden a four-stroke before. So here I am going to a different team. I was coming off another wrist injury. And it felt like I was starting almost from ground zero. But like I said, we did a lot of testing, a lot of riding. Mitch pushed me in the beginning. He basically said to me, you're not in good enough shape. And I'm like, I know. And then that's why I said to him, I want to ride the East Coast. And Mitch always says the same thing. January 1st, be ready to ride anything I tell you to, including Anaheim 1. And I'm like, you got two strong guys on the West Coast. Guys, I don't care. What if someone gets hurt? You better be ready. And then, of course, January rolls around. I'm like, Mitch, I haven't even barely tested. You've been working with the West Coast guys. He's like, yeah, no, you're doing East Coast. You're not ready. I'm like, I told you. And he's like, oh, no, I knew that you would ride East Coast for me, but I just had to tell you to try to get ready in time. And so I did the East Coast the first year, squeaked that one out. And then at the end of the year, I told him, I'm riding West Coast next year. I want to, I live in California, and I won the East. I want to win the West. And he's like, well, I don't need to decide in January. And I'm like, I'm riding West, Mitch. And he goes, I tell all my guys, be ready. And then I think almost everyone on the team got hurt. Townley got hurt. Villapoto got hurt. And I said, let me guess, I'm riding West Coast. And he goes, yeah, we don't have anyone else right now. So that was fun. And then, unfortunately, again, both outdoor seasons, dislocated ankle the first year, and re-broke that bad wrist in 2006. But man, I had really good speed on that bike outdoors. But besides, I think 6 race wins out of 12, I was injured literally half of those 2 years. I did 12 out of the 24 rounds between 05 and 06. So injuries was definitely sort of my holdback at times.
Do you feel, have you always liked the supercross side of things as well? You've always obviously been brought up with the motocross. What was it? Because South Africa, they had a bit, it was fairly jumpy, wasn't it? I remember when Herring and them guys come over, they always seemed a bit ahead of the game at the time in that era.
Yeah, I mean, we had
jumps,
some supercross events, which kind of more of an outdoor motocross track that's somewhat converted into a jumpy track.
Yeah.
Not like your traditional, like American stadium size. So jumping, I felt like was like when I went to Europe, I still thought, I feel like the jumps is where I have a chance to gain on these guys. But the Europeans' corner speed was phenomenal. That was where you had to go, whoa. I mean, even like when I came over to America, over here, all the media, the fans, everyone said, no one is going to touch Pastrana. And I remember Travis said, he's got that European corner speed. And Carmichael used to say the same thing sometimes. And I think a lot of times when I beat him, it was purely on corner speed, which I developed in Europe. We now watch guys like Chiodi and Federici and a lot of those guys that I was around on 125, their corner speed, what I say, the slowest part of the turn, they're always doing a 2 mile an hour faster than the rest. And you had to try to figure out how to do that. And so the jumping came a little more naturally for me. The corner speed was something I worked on. And then when I came to America, Supercross is different because I'm trying to think how to word it. You come out of a turn, if you can't get triple out of the corner, you go double, it's a whole different rhythm. And then how do you compensate, or how do you triple somewhere to get that rhythm back? So it was just the intensity and then the whoops, because they've mellowed them out in recent years, but back then,
savage, right?
Like, Anaheim won, they're going to be massive and brutal. Look, and you're going, I got to get through that.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say whoops was my last thing to master. And the first time I really felt good, comfortable, and confident in the whoops was with Pro Circuit Cowie. I'd never had that before, but I'd also never had a linkage before. And I will say, I honestly believe that the PDS system worked really good in places like Holland and Belgium, because it drives the rear wheel back to the ground very quickly, but not for Supercross, especially not in the whoops. It just moves way too much without a linkage.
Yeah, so skipping.
So it was nice to get on a Cowie and go, okay, I can be a good whoop rider. It was somewhat the bike holding me back, but having confidence in whoops is essential. You cannot, I mean, even like with Prado, I think a lot of people thought the same thing. He's going to be fast, but if the whoops get gnarly, that's going to be his Achilles heel. And I think, was it Anaheim 2 or whatever, he went down the whoops. And, and again, it's like in a year or two, once he's really confident about the bike, knows how to set it up. But, it's just all the little minuscule changes. And then you start believing. It's almost like getting good starts. Once you feel like you've got your technique in your bike and your shifting and your clutch delivery and your RPM, once you've got that down, because for me, that's what helped me in 2000 in the World Championship. I had a rocket ship of a KTM underneath me, and I just got a lot of good starts. So even if it was muddy, or there was some races I wasn't even that good, but I went from first to fourth instead of starting in 10th and finishing 10th, so good starts always help a lot too. And
100%.
So whoops and starts, I think, is probably 90% in your head. But you got to get to that point to come into a set of whoops without thinking you're going to die to actually commit to it.
Yeah, it's a big commitment, that's for sure. Balls out. So when you went from Europe to America, what was the KTM you had? What was that like compared to your one in Europe? Was that very similar, or did it change quite a bit when you?
Actually, we didn't factor this all in, but America has a production rule and my
yeah, of course,
bike in
yeah.
Europe was sensational in 2000.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't a production frame. It wasn't a production swing arm. It wasn't a production rear shock.
Proper factory, yeah.
When I got to America, I remember being like, well, this sucks. There's nothing worse, because in
Downgrade.
sport, everything's supposed to do this, right? Your
Yeah.
speed, your ability, the bike, the equipment, everything's supposed to get better. And now, for the first time, it was like, and I'm like,
Yeah,
this is like my bike in Europe, but not as good.
yeah,
And that was a bit of a tough pill to swallow. And also, I think because the factory operation was pretty new over here, there wasn't many people with experience or a bunch of data, or we just didn't have a really, I know I always end up offending somebody, but it wasn't an A+ crew.
yeah.
It was B+, maybe an A- at very best.
Okay.
And that definitely, I think, affected us as far as just a lot of little things.
Yeah.
A lot of my teammates, they struggled. I think at the first motocross at Glen Helen, I went 1-1, like rode really good and dominated. But if I remember correctly, I think my 3 teammates were 16th, 17th, and 18th, and they were bitching about the bike. Because I still remember Ping was talking to the team manager, and he's like, the bike sucks. And I'm walking back with my trophy from the podium in the press conference. I still remember Ping where he goes, this guy is not doing us any favors. Trust me, the bike is not good. He's like, I don't know what the hell he's doing or how he did it. And they were all just saying, like, they didn't, but they all came off Japanese bikes, and they were struggling with just the bike dancing around so much. No one complained about the horsepower, but you know that old saying, horsepower is irrelevant if you can't put it to the ground.
Yeah.
I think they were struggling. And I do believe that from being on that bike for the previous 2 years and riding in Europe on some really rough square edge tracks,
Yeah.
Austria, and some of those tracks remind me of like a Farley Castle, or where you come out and it's just like,
yeah.
and I just learned how to ride through that. And
Yeah.
for these guys, they were just like, I don't even know how you go in a straight line sometimes. But, but then with the KTM, it had more of a flexible frame. And I remember when I went to a Japanese bike, I remember thinking, man, it's so rigid. I don't like it. I'm like, how do we loosen this thing up? I like the flex because I'd also gotten molded and used to it. So,
Where you were,
yeah.
Everyone always liked the, especially with I was going to ask you about race numbers as well, the 111.
Yes.
And obviously we know about your number 8 as well. What are the reasons behind those numbers that you like there?
Probably because I was a little cocky.
If there is any.
So in South Africa, a lot of times, well, most places, if you don't have an own number, you get a triple-digit number. So
yeah,
I used to say my reason, because like I said, when we were growing up, we were pretty poor, and I used to cut my own numbers out of vinyl.
Yeah.
And I used to say, well, I want 111, so at the end of the year, just peel off the 2 ones on the outside, and we're good for the next year. So that was always my thought process. Because a few times that I didn't win or came up a little short, I ended up with picking number 11 and said, okay, now I only have to take 1 off at the end of the year. So I liked ones. To me, one means you're a winner. Or like when I came to America, someone asked me, why do you have 111? I said, because when you win the first moto and you win the second moto, you get first overall. There's your 3 ones.
Brilliant.
That was kind of my mindset. Because even at the end of 01, when I lost the title, when my rear wheel broke, I was very bitter at the time.
Yeah, that's bad.
Salty bastard for a while. But the number I was awarded was 22. And I'm like, hell no. That's like 2 times loser, So I declined it because I remember when Chad Reed picked it, he asked me, he goes, hey, how come you didn't take 22? I'm like, it's the worst number in the world. And he's like, oh, I just picked it. I'm like, it'll look good on your bike.
Yeah.
But I was like, I always said I'll stick with 111 until I win a championship and get a permanent single digit number. And then the 8 came I liked 8 because of Albertine, Bale, Bradshaw.
Yes.
A lot of the guys
Yeah.
idolized ran 8,
Forgot
and
about Bale with 8. Yeah.
so I wanted. I think at the time, I think 7, 8, and 9 were the only 3 single-digit numbers available. And I think 8 is kind of a cool looking number, depending on how it's shaped. But 8 was kind of a new thing for me. There was no previous like connection or sentimental value. But like I said, a lot of my heroes had ran 8 at some point in their career, and just resonated.
When you said about Albertine, remembered that straight away, and then I just thought, oh, yeah, I remember now Bale had the 8 as well. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, when Albertine won his world championship, he was number 10. When I won my world championship, I was number 10. When he won his national championship, he was number 8. I was number 8. And we both wore MSR gear. So
wow.
stupid,
That is
cool,
pretty
geeky
cool.
little facts there. But
Yeah. I do like that stuff. That's brilliant. Did you? I used to love there used to be so many cool adverts back in the day. Did you like being part of some of them? And like there were some always cool ones in the magazines and stuff like that.
So the one you're showing me,
Yeah,
that was a photo shoot just for Thor in their studio before the season.
Yeah.
But I do remember when all the American magazines came out. That was literally when you open the cover. That was the first
inside.
Thor. And I mean, for lack of better terms, it always puts a big smile on my face. Like I had nothing to do with that commercial. I just opened it and I was as surprised as anyone. But I just loved it. Great expectations, huge results, and not to mention, I also think that gear was pretty sick looking, considering it's almost 25 years old now.
It is really good, isn't it?
So
it looks nice. Holds up now.
What's that?
It holds up now for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, everything goes full circle. They'll probably
do
something just like that here next year. So who knows?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Everyone likes to do a bit of retro and that now as well, don't they? Every now and then.
But like you said, as far as I was always flattered when I would open a magazine and see myself. That's a cool shot there. That's one of my favorites, just because if you look carefully, if there was a video to go with that picture, I absolutely just annihilated that berm, and my handlebar is tickling the ground. Because a lot of people said, let me guess, you fell right after this was snapped. I'm like, nope. I just created this. It was a Dunlop ad, so they did fluff the berm and make it nice and water it. And they're like, we just want to get like a big explosion. I'm like, I said, hold on tight, here it comes. And that's still one of my favorite photos of all time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Everyone loves the berm.
The opposite side plate, you know you're doing something right.
100.
That one was a little bit sad because I love the helmet and the owner, Tony, and I actually left Thor because I was, instead of taking a big paycheck, I took a very small paycheck and became a partner in the M2R brand, who was designing a street line, gear, the whole nine. And unfortunately, Tony, who was an Australian guy, you can see the names he had at that time: Langston, Pastrana, Lusk, Honda, Metcalf. Who? Camo? What does that say? I don't even know what the hell it is. But anyway, they had a lot of guys in America, and Tony, they came up with some designs based off some of the colorful things that I'd always had and put it into production. And those helmets sold really well. I remember getting some really good royalty checks off of them. But yeah, I actually decided I wanted to be an owner. I've always had this side of me that's enjoyed business. Like, why do business succeed? Why do they fail? Why does some clothing work? Why does it, fizzle out? How's Fox been able to keep themselves relevant? That was Don Maeda. I think I said something like to him, he goes, do you actually ever read the magazine? I go, yeah, when I'm taking a shit. And I got a great idea for an ad.
That's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant.
That was in front of my house.
Was it?
Yeah, just got Don Maeda was doing a video as well. What was it called? Crush. And he's like, hey, I don't know if there'd be anything we could do at your house. It'd be kind of cool. So we'd like not just at a track all the time. And it was a pretty sketchy jump, to be completely honest. But I took the tractor and just built this like booter about 100 feet away from an elevated pad where I was going to do like a garage workshop. And then it had a massive drop on the backside. That was the landing. But it's looking back, if you didn't nail it properly, that could have been hospital bound. But anyway, I was a little, I don't know, didn't use tape measures or common sense sometimes, and built this random booter in the middle of the yard. And I actually had to break the wooden fence and encroach on my neighbor's property to get a run. And I hit it wide open in fourth gear. It was about 160 feet on and that's a 252 stroke. But it made pretty sweet photos.
Yeah, did sure. Love it.
That was, well, to be honest, that was the first year. I didn't even know what freaking chains we used, their brand.
Yeah, it was like.
Yeah, there were times I opened up, I'm like, oh, that's right, we use their products. That's cool.
What's
I
up?
think that was again in the off season when it rains. The boys go and play in the hills. You've probably seen a lot of the old videos.
Yeah,
hills. There's one cool thing is we have a lot of good riding around here still. I mean, yes, it's growing and stuff's being shut down. Oh, yep. Me, Brown, and Hughes. We were all best friends that year. Not.
That was like some proper savage racing that year.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess at the end of the day, the one good thing is I do respect those guys. Mike Brown, when he puts his helmet on, is an asshole.
Yeah.
Ryan, when he puts his helmet on, is an asshole.
Yeah.
Little 111 apparently can be an asshole when he puts his helmet on.
That's it.
But it's just
the thing. See, everyone's trying to win. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I look back and you often hear riders, whether it's Reed, Carmichael, Stewart. For me, it was Mike Brown. My dislike for him started in '99. I got a whole shot in Brazil, and I wasn't that fast at the time. And I think Brown was struggling to get around me. He had more pace, but I was being a pretty good roadblock. And when we got back into the woods where there were no fans, like he'd got past me, he slows down, looks back, and flips me the bird. And I'm like, I said some other things in my head. I'm like, oh, no, you didn't, mother. And I smashed him in the next turn, and we went back and forth. And he lost the GP because we were so busy trying to take each other out. I think Luigi Segui won. He was Cat Honda. Yeah,
Cat Honda, yeah. In the red.
He won with like a 3-1, but Mike Brown should have gone 1-1. But he went 1-3, and Segui won. And I just remember thinking, I didn't even know Mike Brown personally, but I still remember thinking, what a wanker. Like, I can't stand this. And then in 2000, because I joke with people, they ask, like, who would you say was the biggest rival? I'm like, there's only one name that comes up every time. I go 1999, it was Mike Brown, me, and me staying healthy, but it was me and Mike Brown. 2000, it was me, Mike Brown, Jamie Dobb. 2001, it was me, Mike Brown, Travis Pastrana. 03 was me, Mike Brown, Ryan Hughes. 05 was me, Mike Brown, Tedesco and those guys. And, and it just, every time it seemed that we were.
Seems to be Brown.
But at the same time, when he takes his helmet off, Mike's a nice guy, very soft spoken.
Spoken to him, yeah.
Yeah, it
doesn't he boo to a goose, does he? He literally looks almost like
it's like two different personalities. But
yeah,
a lot of guys are like that. They can be really cool and laid back, and they put their helmet on, they turn into a different animal. And I would put myself in the same category. But yeah, it always seemed like me and Mike Brown and someone else were getting into it somehow. So, but again, it's those battles that make you really remember when you really battle and it's fierce and it's intense and you come out on top. It makes it more special. If it just kind of happens and you get a little bit lucky, it doesn't feel the same way. You know, as I always say, wins are wins and championships are championships, but how you feel is different. Like, you know, when I won the world championship, it was an incredible moment. It was the highlight of my career, and it was just, you know, it almost felt like a weird dream. But, you know, not saying it in a cocky way, but I felt like I was never had my back to the wall and was fighting from behind or whatever. It was like I got the points lead at round 3 in Bolton Squad and stayed consistent and just slowly started padding my points lead. And about halfway through the championship, I had already decided that I was the winner, you know, in my head. My dad's like, you know, my dad's always been like, oh, don't get cocky. You know, you could get hurt. You could get taken out. Could have mechanical, blah, blah, blah. So, but that one, as much as it was my dream as a kid, by the time I won it, I already felt like I'd played that movie through my head multiple times. So, whereas some of the other ones, like 2007, where I had to come from behind, that feels a little more special because you were like, whew, barely pulled that one off, and we got it done.
So you must have had a lot of inner, and obviously what you talked about with that strong mind in the head and the focus, because to go from where you were to winning that world championship is a whole other thing. Then to go over to America and do the same thing, as you know, only a few do that. So do you think that the way you always felt that underdog and maybe always had that bit of edge that you had to have to toughen up, and then obviously that helped you later on?
Yeah. It's always hard because I can only relate to how it was for me, you know. Everyone's story is a little bit different, right? So, so I think for me, it was always kind of the underdog, but then at some point you're not the underdog, you know, you're labeled as one of the favorites or expected to win. So that kind of mindset changes a little bit. But I always tried to, I think sometimes I would speak like I was very confident, but deep down was struggling, almost convincing myself. You know, you never want to show weakness or, but where I was good was when the championship was on the line or it was crunch time and there was no room for error and, you know, pressure's on, you know, some people can rise to it, some crack. Every time that it was crunch time, I was able to perform, and sometimes
that's what I meant. Yeah.
And then once that happens, it's like a snowball. You start realizing, oh, because by like 2007 in the outdoors, at one point, Stewart should have won it, Wyndham could have won it, Ferry could have won it, Alessi could have won it, Short could have won it, and I was behind all 6th place at halfway in the points. I mean, halfway through the series, 6th in points. And I just knew if I just put the pressure on and do what I can do and, you know, just do it with confidence, they might crack. And it felt like they did. They started cracking and they made it a little bit easier on me. But it felt good to believe in yourself, like, hey, if anyone's going to crack under pressure, it's not me. And you know, again, you have to tell yourself that. And again, like sometimes I would say things in a press conference or to the media that maybe almost seemed like borderline arrogant or cocky.
But it roused people, yeah.
But walking away, there were times inside I was nervous because I said what I believe, but I don't know if I always truly felt it deep down. But you almost have to try to talk yourself into believing that you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer. If you don't truly, you can say I'm going to win, but if you don't really believe it deep down, you won't. So you have to make sure your mindset is, I'm going to win. Come hell or high water, I'm going to win this thing.
And like what you said earlier about the story with the pro circuit, when you actually go over and say, like, you know, I'm going to whip you boys up, and then actually do it. That really affects them, doesn't it? They're like, oh, and he's done it as well.
Yeah, no, they were not happy. And the other
No.
thing, I hadn't been to Millville before. I'd only watched it on TV, but I decided it was a track that I was really good at, was going to be good. And I decided before we went there that I was going to go 1-1. I wish I could do that more often.
Yeah.
But there were times when, you truly believed it. And
Confidence.
to me, anything less than dominating that day was not going to fly. And it was cool. It feels even more special when you can run your mouth and then back it up.
Yeah, that's not easy. Yeah. And like you said, there's so many talented riders and special riders all over the world. But then, like you said, there's those little special extra things, the mental side, and all these sorts of things that make the difference. You can't all be champions at the end of the day.
Yeah, you go look at, even my buddy Kurt Nickel, still never won a world title, was so close so many times. And, there's a part of me that feels for him a little bit because, I asked him before, he said, I would trade in all my second and third finishes to have 1 year just to have that number one plate. And I go, I get it, and that's so many of us. And there's been good riders that didn't quite accomplish that or could have won more. Or so it comes back to you're not given anything. You don't deserve anything. You get what you put out. And sometimes luck is with you and sometimes it's against you. I look back at my career and I will definitely tell you, I felt like I would say I never had the luck being neutral. It was either for me or against me. So I was either winning or something bad happened. But some of the wins I got a little bit lucky, and some of the losses I was unlucky. But when you add it all together, you kind of go, well, it kind of cancels itself out. Got lucky there, got unlucky there. And my dad always used to say, you get out what you put in. And he would tell me, I still remember in Holland, it was well below freezing. They were having I don't even know, Arctic freeze over. It was really miserable. And at 5 a.m., I think he got up to go piss or something. And he comes in the room and he's just, all right, time for your run. And it's freezing. I'm like, and it was an hour or so run I was supposed to do, hour and 15, hour and 20. And I'm like, no, I'm going to sleep in. I'll do it in a bit. And he rips the blanket off and this, and kind of really pissed me off because I thought he was being really, bit of a prick at the moment. And unnecessarily, but he basically forced me out of bed, and I'm still wiping the sleep boogers out of my eyes, and I was so irritated with him. But I ran when I started. I was freezing, but I ran at such a pace and intensity. In my head, I was MFing him the whole time, and I came back. And he goes, how was the run? Well, how do you think? There was no one out in the streets. It's freezing cold. It's totally unnecessary. I'm not riding today. It's my day off, blah, blah, blah. And I go, and I said, how many other people do you think are running in freezing cold in the dark? And he looks at me and goes, probably no one. I said, exactly. And he goes, now you know what it means. You're doing those extra things that the other guys aren't. So you now know that you ran in the worst conditions at the early hours of the morning. I think he had a little bit of that kind of rocky mindset. And he tried to follow me. But basically what he said is, you're right. You're the only one that probably got up and did that badass run in the dark where it was, I think it was minus 30. I mean, it was the coldest I'd ever experienced. And it did. It brought that confidence of, I am doing things that not everyone else is doing, and that brings that mental game. And there were some tough times of pushing yourself through a lot, whether it was pain or burnout or fatigue, all those things. But it also strengthened my mental game. because you almost go to the line now like, I worked harder than all these guys. Like, I deserve to win. And, gets back to you. You get what you deserve. But when you believe, when you go to the line, that I've done everything I can to be fit and fast and have the best bike and the best setup, that's half the battle. Because you go in there like, I deserve to win today. And when you think that way, it starts happening.
Big thing, yeah. It's a big thing. Is there did you ever have a favourite race bike in your career? You've obviously rode a lot of good bikes.
I'm torn between two. My 2000 World Championship KTM 125. That bike was fast, like for its time and its era, it was incredible. And then I would say my 2006 Pro Circuit Kawasaki, because 05 was the steel frame, and then they switched to the aluminum frame. And I actually remember when I first rode the aluminum frame bike, I didn't like it. But we had to make some adjustments with clamps and races and linkage, swing, things that we could do. And then I got to a point where I felt really dialed in. I still remember I was on the 254 stroke Pro Circuit bike at the Cowie test track, and Stuart was on the 252 stroke before they had the 450. And he hopped in behind me when I was doing a moto, and he was doing this one section. He got past me, and I remember blitzing past him in the whoops, and it happened over and over. Like almost every lap, he would almost get me, or then one lap he'd get me, and then I'd blow by him. And I remember sitting back at the truck, and I could see the factory Cowie guys over there, and James was just not happy because, in all fairness, his bike did not look good through the whoops. And I was sitting there going, I feel so good through these whoops, and they're so baked and cupped out and nasty and gnarly. But that bike just, it had power, it had stability, the suspension. Bones, who probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, was an amazing suspension tuner. And we got along very well, and we spent a lot of time together. Because he used to say, guys hate testing. And I actually enjoyed it with him, because with Mitch, his bikes were so high performance, they didn't last very long. So race bikes were literally for the race day. Your practice bike felt like a turd compared to the race bike. But when we went testing, it basically was a race bike motor. So when he's like, do you want to test all week? I was like, yeah. Because I got to ride the real race motor. And now we're figuring out how to, what I was still learning what I like and didn't like with whoops and reaction. Like, do you want
handling
do you need to speed the rebound up? Is it packing? Is it fishtail? This, and that old saying, for every change or action, there's an opposite reaction. So one minute we're like, that's better, but now it made the forks worse. And now that's better.
Constantly just fine tuning.
Turning. So we went through a lot of stuff, and I just felt really at one with that bike. And the same thing is going into 2000 with KTM. They were not shy at just, I remember it was raining, and we ended up in south of France or Italy or something. And KTM opened their van, and it was literally a row of frames and a row of swing arms. And they're all different. You're going to start with that. We're going to go through every. And I remember a couple of times doing a couple laps, and I'm like, I don't like it. And they would have to take everything off that frame and put it onto a different frame. Everything. The CDI box, the cables, the motor, everything. So the only thing that changed was the frame. And I remember thinking, I feel like such a dick. I just told them it was terrible. And now they got 2 hours of work ahead of them just before you try something else. But you kind of understand that's the process. And it was fun. I love progression. So to me, testing gets monotonous sometimes, don't get me wrong. And if you feel like you're chasing your tail, it's annoying. But when I saw and felt progress, I was like, let's keep going. Where are we meeting tomorrow? What time? How many laps are we going to do? And 2000 125cc World Championship bike, such a fun bike, just a rocket. And then my 06 Cowie 250 aluminum frame pro circuit bike. We were the best.
Beautiful, was it? Who was the biggest influence on your career, and why?
My dad, because he kind of did everything.
To
He
make it
drove me to the
happen.
races. He taught me how to ride, even though he didn't. He was learning. We found that we were able to get a pirated VHS of Gary Bailey training. So yeah, he drove me to the track. He worked on my bikes. He's mechanic. My dad modified my bikes. You know, we didn't have an engine tuner until I went pro. My dad did everything. He used to run with me, take me to the gym,
Hey.
drop me off at school, take me to the track, kick my ass, yell at me. He was my agent. Yeah, everything. So without my dad, I literally wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and as a team, it must have been a proud thing for both of you. Like you said, you know, we say things like, you know, would love to be a world champion. I bet to be a world champion, to go to America, win the Supercross, win the outdoors, then the 450. It's pretty special.
No, it is for sure. I mean, to me, the one moment that sticks out was when I won the world championship. I won it at the penultimate round in Finland, Heinola. And of course, I saw some footage and I'm like, going 1-1, baby. And
Yeah.
I did. I won easily in it. And I won the world championship after the first moto. So with three motos to go. And it was like a Cinderella story of a weekend. Fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying. Win the first moto, ran away with it. And then just coming, and the way the track is like a jump that goes back down to the start section, which is the lower area. And coming across the finish line, and then I look on the start straight, and there's just a sea of people, and there's the big banner, and you know, the champagne, and just pulling up, and then my dad and my uncle hugging me, and then seeing them cry. I don't think I'd ever see my dad cry. I was trying to think about it. I don't think I've ever seen him cry. But to see and hear him like crying on my shoulder, it was special. Like,
Meant the world, yeah.
I think mentally I'd already won the world championship in my mind. So when it physically happened, it was a bit of a, you hear people say it didn't seem like reality, or, however you want to word it. I felt like I was I don't even know how to word it. Like you're not even in your own body, like the out of body experience. Like I came down and I'm just going, wow, look at all these people. They're all happy, and they're happy because I just won the world championship. But I it's weird. You're looking at them, and then, like I said, to see and my uncle was a huge influence too. Not to cut my mom out of it. Behind every great dad's program is a mom.
100%.
Trying to budget bills and keep creditors off your back and make dinner. So she did a lot, but more from the behind the scenes side. My dad was definitely by far number one. And then my uncle was also very involved from a young age, big supporter. Even like my aunt used to video. Like my family always, I would say we've always had a good, tight knit family, and we've always rallied around each other and helped each other. But yeah, without a doubt, it's my dad. He did so much for so long, and even now, he lives. I joke, I go, now he's the one that lives further up the hill than I do, with a better view. He can look down on me, but that's because I travel more often, so I don't want to be back in the hills that far. My parents are pretty much semi-retired now, and it's nice to see my parents. They're financially well off, and between business and everything we've done, that they can enjoy life. And my sister's in the States, my uncle's here, married. I get to see him, my nephews. We all live by each other, so
That's great. Yeah,
it's cool. It's racing is one thing, but you sometimes don't really think, okay, what about afterwards? To have a life where we have my immediate family, and unfortunately, South Africa is not what it used to be, or not the country I grew up in. So even a lot of my other family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, they're actually in England. based on our family's history, they were able to get British passports because actually both my grands were British. So we have, deep British roots. So even though we're all South African, we're in America or England right now. So it's pretty interesting.
We'll have to claim on you as well.
Yeah.
We'll claim Grant Langston. Did you have any weird and wonderful superstitions at all, Grant, in your career? Did you have any?
No, I only realized I just had habits.
Mm-hmm.
I always put my left riding sock on, then the right, then my left knee brace, then the right. But I didn't even realize I did it. I just
It's like just a routine.
I've noticed you always do the same thing. I get nervous and twitchy on the line, and what's funny is if I'm nervous in a business setting or on stage, like I'll get like sweaty armpits or whatever. But with racing, when the 30-second card would go up, my upper lip would start sweating. It's the only time. The only time. Even if I'm hot, I sweat everywhere, but not really on my. And you see a lot of old footage of me, and I'm on the line. I'm like, my dad's like, the car turned sideways, and I'm still wiping my upper lip in neutral. He would about lose his mind. I always got it again, But I always had this weird thing of wiping my upper lip because I remember one time I got new like leather, where they still had some leather, and I kept wiping with these new black leather gloves. And I know some people won't laugh, but I almost had this Hitler look because I had this little black smear down. No one told me, and I'm on the podium being interviewed on South African national TV, and I've got this little black smudge mark. But no real weird superstitions. I just tried to focus, prep myself, because with always moving and moving on, like if you actually go look at my career, I never defended a championship ever. The only time I would have been in 2008 going to the outdoors, but I had eye cancer. But I always won and moved on. And from South Africa, if I won the 50s, I went to the 80s, and then I won there, went to the 60s, won there, went back to the actual big 80s, now 85s. One, I lie. One time on 80cc, I was too small and young to go to 125. So I actually won every national for 2 years straight, never lost a race. But that's the only time I defended. But every year it was try and accomplish a goal, and then it was on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Oh, I'm lying again. The Dutch Championship, because when I rode for Keith,
you did the
Dutch. I won it in '99. Again, one of those kind of come from behind, not the favorite in the sand, but won it. And then 2000 dominated it. But usually it was just kind of kept moving and moving. So it was always on to the next thing, the next thing.
I was going to ask you something as well, because there was a rider that came over, and I finished racing in 2000, and I was on a 125 as well. And I rode at Farley Castle, and it was a national there. And I was sort of expected to be winning or whatever. And there was a guy that came over, and I didn't have a clue who he was. And he was on a Kawasaki, and his name was Ian Topless. So I'm presuming you would know who that was. And I had a great race with him. He literally cleaned us up all weekend. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And I managed to beat him in the last race of the weekend, which was a bit of a thing after he literally handed it to us all weekend. But yeah, and then I found out who he was, and I didn't even realise that he'd gone on and done some GPs a little bit and stuff like that. Because I spoke to Neville Bradshaw, and he told me about him.
Yeah, so in 97 in South Africa, where I said I pretty much skipped the schoolboy class, went to seniors.
Yep.
Ian Topless won the championship, and I ended up, I'm trying to remember, his teammate was Freddie Faria, and they were on Kawasaki in South Africa. I was on Honda at the time. But he won the championship that year, both 125 and 250. So, I mean, here's the weird part, and I've tried to figure it out, because there were guys like that. And I promise you, there's a whole host of names over the last 30 years that I've been around the motocross scene that I feel like saying, you take your top rider from England right now, whoever that may be, and you send him to South Africa, he's going to struggle to win, even though you would expect it. But the problem often happens is you take these guys that are really fast on their local tracks, and then they go to Europe, and I don't know if it's the mental aspect and just everything. You know, the reality is a lot of them are not good in the mud, don't really know real sand, haven't ridden factory bikes. So I think when you put everything together, there's this step that a few of us have been able to overcome. And so many of these guys, you know, I'm friends with them. Like I said, Ian Topless, I don't care what he says, he did not like me in 1997, for sure. But what's cool is a lot of the guys that hated me got to a point where they're like, all right, this guy's the real deal. And they turned from haters to supporters. So all the guys, I know guys that literally told me to my face they're going to F me up, that are now some of my best friends and biggest supporters, you know, and they would fly from South Africa to come to America, Glen Helen. I remember a bunch of these guys that I raced against that didn't like me were there cheering over the fence, going nuts, you know, and we're hanging out and having dinner. And it's funny how things can do full circle, but there's something to be said about that step. And just a few have been able to really do it, you know. But if I turn it back around, Tyler Rattray, don't quote me on this, but I don't think Tyler Rattray ever won a South African championship, but he won a World Cup. He got his ass kicked by Wyatt Avis and several guys around that age, Richard van der Vestes, and there was a lot of guys that just straight up beat him in South Africa. So then to see him win a world title over Tommy Searle was, even for me, a little bit like, whoa, something's not everything adds up, in the sense of you can dominate in South Africa and you're like, oh, he's gonna be good, and then they kind of crumble,
can't do it,
everything. And I think Rattray was more, I don't mean it like disrespectful, but he was very stubborn and not the most intelligent guy, but he just would, as we say, pound the pavement. Like he would work really hard to overcome maybe the lack of talent he had.
The hard work.
I think I had some talent, probably not the most naturally talented, but I had, I think, a combination of work ethic, the mental game, and talent. And it's hard. I think if we could figure out the magic potion, we'd all be millionaires, right, Lee?
100%. Yeah, exactly that. And like you said, like, so he was over, and of course we weren't pros, we were like amateurs. So you think that was 99, I think that was. So, and then you were what, half a year or nearly a year away from winning the world title.
Yeah.
And like you said, a year or two before, like he was one of your top guys. Like,
yeah.
So like you said, it's just.
Well, at the beginning of '97, like I said, I won that one kind of mutter, got pushed up, but I wasn't the fastest guy in South Africa at the beginning of the season, which for us is, I think our first race is normally like March or April, and the last one, because our seasons are different, they'll usually do like half the series, and then in South Africa it's the winter break, you know, like July, you know, they'll take a little breather and then end the season right before Christmas. Like a lot of times our last race was November, late November or something. But after that break, I remember before the break, for a lap or two, I was maybe as fast as them, but I would say on average, I was third, fourth, fifth fastest guy. And then the second half, I found that next level, and then I was the guy. But, you know, I think at that time for South Africa, I was going really fast, but like Ian Topless was a top guy. There was a period where in that class, Yamaha had two strong riders. Cowie had two strong riders. Honda had strong, you know, every manufacturer had good guys that either had been national champions or had international experience. Because I remember Ryan Hunt would come back and everyone was kind of like, where is he? You know, he's been in England and he's like, is he at another level? Can we beat, you know? And then on the racetrack, Ryan Hunt came back a couple of times, and I remember seeing him get beat. He also won a lot, don't get me wrong, but you watched him get beat. So
Yeah.
that kind of also starts getting the brain going like, well, he had like really good results in the British Championship. You know, maybe we're not actually that far off like we once thought. So
Yeah. But like you said, I think it's like you said, there's just like what you said earlier, there's so many talented guys and they've got the fastest, like even one of my favourites has got some bottoms up there that you probably noticed, the old Rob Herring. He was one of the fastest guys on the planet at times, but it's the whole thing, you know, he would be unlucky with injuries and stuff like that, but it's the, you got the consistency, the mental, the fitness, it's just so many things, isn't there?
Well, I never got to see it because I mean, I haven't seen any video footage in that, but I'm trying to remember, it might have been Tony Albertine that actually said, he goes, most of the time, Robbie had Greg covered on speed. Greg found a way to win. And
Very mentally
even,
tough.
you know, a lot of people have said Robbie Herring's one of those kind of naturally gifted riders that should have probably been a world champion in my mind. But again, doesn't have a number one plate for that to prove it. But
Yep.
didn't he win? Hasn't he won like umpteen British titles?
Yeah, 11, I think.
But who's counting?
Yeah, he had like because they back then they used to do 125, 250, and all that in the one day, so he would ride all of them. So obviously sometimes he was winning a couple in a year, but yeah, he was just so far. Even that '92 season when he wore all this Apico gear on the Castro Honda, he was like, you had Smith, Bob Moore, Puzars, Trampers Parkers, all them guys, and he would like just smoke them in a race, but doing it consistently and all that was obviously a different thing, isn't it, over a whole series. And don't think Robert would admit anyway he wasn't the fittest of guys, but speed wise, Jesus man.
You know, and that can be a curse. Someone after what you just said, the first name that came to my mind was Kevin Windham.
Yeah.
Could just absolutely murder anyone on any given day. And I don't know if talent sometimes can also be a curse because, you know, Ricky Carmichael, I watched Wyndham ride around Carmichael in his prime and embarrass him at a few tracks like Unadilla, Washougal. And you just, I mean, I was 125 and watching it, like literally on the side of the track, watching this going, damn, he makes it look so easy. And then you're like, but he has no titles to show for it. So it's, if you could build the perfect rider, man, it's tough because, again, talent helps a lot, but I think sometimes that very top, you know, the old pyramid thing. Pretty good, really good, great, special, super talented, you know, but right at the top, you got to have all those things that go together, which is tenacity, will to win, mindset, ability to adjust, things you don't even get taught how to do. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to get the whole shot. You're visualizing everything. And then coming the first turn, someone takes you out and all of a sudden your whole game plan is thrown off. Now you got to reset. All right, now I'm the hunter, you know, I got to go after these guys. So being able to, every little thing is, there's stuff that you just can't be coached on. Just instinct, I think. And when you look at all the greatest of the greats, they found a way. Was a fifth overall that day on their worst day, but you know, if fifth is the worst day you have, it's actually not a bad day, especially if you wins. You know,
what was the best atmosphere that you've ever ridden at? Would you say?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I never had a home GP, so I didn't have a whole place for me. I've always been a visitor wherever I went.
That's true. Yeah.
I would say, generally, just in general, like atmosphere and vibe. I've always enjoyed Motocross of Nations, because even though you've got English, Italian, French, Australian, South African, and everyone wants their team to win, and people are joking and talking shit in the pits and we're gonna kick you out. It's in a nice way,
Bantery way.
yeah, like we're gonna win. And so I remember donations talking to fans from many countries, and they were like, we're Team Germany, or but hey, have a good race tomorrow, we're big fans. So there's that, I call it the non violent kind of, like, you're
Everyone almost goes there to like have a good time. There's a
you
party.
got your football fans, and they all get functional over a club meeting, and I'm like, come on, guys, let's grow up a little bit. But when donations and that stuff rolls around, there's this fun shit talking camaraderie, and at the end of the day, everyone kumbayas and has a great time. So I've always loved the vibe of Des Nations, France, even in America, and in Europe. I think Redbud's done a really good job.
Yeah.
And it's cool because so many European and other country fans came over. So you get this truly international crowd who are rooting for their country and their boys, but everyone's there for the same reason. They love racing. They love it. So to me, it's a great camaraderie. I would say for me, because Glen Helen became my adopted home race, I always had a great fan response. Glen Helen was my very first motocross win in America and my very last win in America. And I was felt like a lot of the American fans took me in as their adopted son type thing. So I always had huge support there. So it was my home race away from home. If that makes sense.
That's a proper track as well, isn't it?
I like, what's funny though is we spent so many laps testing because it's, again, up the road. I hated Glen Helen, except on National Day, because it was actually the track. A lot of times for practice days, they don't run the big hills, and all of a sudden I've probably done, I don't even know, I've probably done more laps on that track than any other track in my life.
Yeah.
And to a point where I hated it, but when the next came around, I was excited because it was like, I always do well here. My result was a second, but I won every other time. So, again, that was my home race, and a lot of support from the fans.
Yeah. How did the deal come up with Yamaha after the was it the Pro Circuit, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
how did that come about?
Well, my intention obviously was, take that one. The goal was take one step back, like leaving KTM, even though I technically was in the big bike class, to go back to the small bike class, but kind of rebuild the career and move forward. So 2 years with Mitch. Another funny story is when I signed with him, he said, just win me a title. I said, I guarantee I'll win you a motocross championship. I didn't win a motocross championship, but I went back-to-back Supercross titles. So didn't go according to plan. But obviously in 2006, there was no secret. Like, he knew I would be moving on, and he wanted the best for me. And Keith McCarty, who ran Yamaha, actually called Mitch, and Mitch said something along the lines of, if you don't sign him, you're an idiot type thing. So Mitch also told Yamaha, like, you should. And Yamaha was good to me. A little bit different, kind of very corporate organization and all that. But, the people within the team were, doing what they could. But I struggled with the bike at first, but we made a lot of changes, got better. Actually ended up running a new chassis, the 08 chassis, at the last 4 rounds, where I think I won them all. Or no, wait, went second, first. Wyndham pulled off on the white flag and cost me my first win. But anyway, that's another story.
Wow.
I should have gone 1-1-1-1 after that new chassis. But anyway, I came through to win the championship. So, for me, I didn't know where I was going to go after pro circuit. My agent, I ended up getting an agent. I said, look, I just don't want to deal with, it's not even like I don't want to deal with it. I didn't want to have to try and promote myself to people and tell them why they should hire me and how much I think I'm worth. And it's awkward for me. So I had an agent and let him do that. And he even said, he goes, because I had an offer from Honda as well.
Did you?
It wasn't very good, but it was an offer. But it kind of came down to going to Kawasaki or Yamaha. But the Kawasaki deal was you're going to be the number 2 to James Stewart. And I was no, there's no way. And that ended it. So I went to Yamaha where they said, you're our guy. You're the number 1. If you go look, because there was that L&M team that Reed was on, Reed and Ramsey, but they were only scheduled for Supercross. So for Yamaha, they're like, you are our team. Like, it's you. And I like that. It comes with a lot of pressure, but, because if you're injured, there is no team kind of. But I like the fact that you're our guy. We'll do whatever we can. So to me, it was the right option. So,
did you enjoy the bike?
No.
No.
It was very rigid. It was very awkward. They had been going down a road that I think Chad Reed liked. Chad liked to steer the bike like Supercross with the rear. And the forks were massive. The clamps were everything was like over-engineered, in my opinion, for me. So when I got there, I actually went home and was like, I think I signed the wrong contract. It was a good financial contract and all that, but I did not like the bike at first, not at all. If you actually look at photos very carefully, you'll see that when I win the championship, I'm running stock forks, stock clamps, stock everything, just with internal changes.
Wow.
They wasted a lot of money on suspension and stuff that I just said, but again, I think that came back to my KTM days of I liked a loose motorcycle.
Yeah. So if it felt interesting. Did you prefer the Supercross was it different for the Supercross? Obviously it's a totally different thing, the Supercross and the Motocross, but did you always prefer the Motocross side, or did you like?
I mean, obviously motocross came more naturally. For obvious reasons, but to me, for Supercross, it felt like I was always building in a work in progress, and I enjoyed the challenge, especially when I felt like. So in the beginning, you're trying to figure it out. KTM was trying to figure it out. Like, we didn't even have a suspension guy at first. Like, that happened later on. So it was kind of old school, run what you brung. But then you move along, and then like with Yamaha, they had a bunch of engineers and people, but it got to a point where I realized everything they presented me is not what I wanted. And I was like trying to figure out, how do I relate to them what I'm looking for and not looking for? And then it was, okay, I think because I rode a KTM with a steel frame that flexes more, I need more flex. I need more motion in the bike, and it's dead. It's rigid. Like, so once you start, because part of being a good rider is giving good feedback, so the team can make changes.
Yeah, good changes.
It's easy to come in and go, it sucks.
Doesn't help anyone. Yeah.
You know what? So giving that information and feedback is as important as anything. So. Again, I had to try to learn, how do I relay what I'm trying to say in professional terms, because in the beginning, when I, like with KTM in the early days in Europe, what do you think? I don't like it. It's going to be better. I'm like, everywhere, and it's like that's not good information.
Yeah.
And then you start learning, and you go, okay, you know what? I didn't like it here, but what I did notice is I felt better there. Because then they are smart people and they go, okay, that means it's doing this, and then hold on, we'll work on something. So the better you can describe the feelings, and we always joke about the moto term, like everyone's like, and
That's it. That's what I did to my dad, I think.
But you got to get that to engineers, and
yeah, of course.
Like with Kawasaki and Yamaha, there were Japanese engineers that test track that didn't even speak English. So doing the he and the ha and the blah 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 meant nothing to them. Like you had to give words, and again, it's all a part of progressing and growing. Our sport is a lot of young kids, and I think sometimes it's easy to judge people by something dumb they said or something dumb they did, but there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of things going on. And it's that old saying, I look back now and I'm like, man, if I could do it all over again, I guarantee you I'd do it a little bit different and much better. But everyone would say the same thing, right?
Is there any other sports, Grant, you like? Is any other motorcycling sports, any other sports in general that you're interested, you watch? Or
well, I do like rugby, especially seeing as we kick your team's ass every World Cup since I can remember. We grew up with rugby, so yes, I do love rugby. And the Springboks are good.
Of course,
but I'm a huge motor racing fan in general. My favorite sport, honestly, is MotoGP. I love MotoGP, and it's cool too because, like, actually, next weekend I'm flying to Austin as a guest of Yamaha. All expense trip paid for to my favorite event. So I'm excited, but I'm also friends with the Binder brothers, Fabio Quartararo, Jack Miller, all those guys. So it's nice when some of these guys. They've come out here in the winter times. We've gone riding together at the tracks, and I say training. The one time I went on a mountain bike, they were on the mountain bikes. I was on an e-mountain bike.
That's the best bet.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not suffering. I'm like, my days are done.
You've done that.
I'm a pussy. I just want to get out of it. So, but I've always just had a massive passion for MotoGP. It's my favorite thing. In fact, the one guy that I talk to on social media a lot, and I'm dying to meet him, is Johnny Ray. He was at Desert Martin in '95.
No way.
I don't know if he was, or he was. Anyway, he messaged me one day and said, "Hey, what can you tell me about Lafferty?" And I'm like, I had nothing. But yeah. So I again, World Superbike. Even in American Superbike over here, there's a couple South Africans. Cam Peterson, that was a good motocross rider. Him, Binder, and a couple of my other friends, they all raced together. They went road racing, which several people have done. So I've always I've done some track days.
About to ask you that. I was about to ask you that.
I'd like to say for a beginner, I'm really good on a street bike too.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. I just think it's amazing, and I think I would really want to come to the British Grand Prix because my half my family that live in the UK now.
Yeah, it makes
they
sense.
Go there. My cousins and that are into it. Another kid that was a little bit younger than me, Philip Atkins, he has raced British Superbikes for many years. So there's a lot of people in those similar circles, but I enjoyed Formula One until I went to the hybrids. I went to a F1 race and heard the hybrids, and then I was like, I'm never wasting my time coming to this shit ever again. I love the screaming V10s, V12s, V8s. So I hope But Ayrton Senna was my hero. Wayne Rainey was my hero. Actually, a friend of mine is Kevin Schwantz. I know Ben.
I loved him.
Yeah, so it's really cool. One cool thing about being successful in motocross is being introduced and exposed to people I look up to. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I really, really love MotoGP. I was going to say it's always such good racing, except Marc Marquez is really ruining it this year. But at the same time, that guy is unbelievable, and he deserves it.
Yeah. Have you ever had a go at anything like a Speedway? Because obviously I do Speedway stuff as well. Do you ever have a go at that?
Yeah, when I was a kid in South Africa, so this is another funny story.
Yeah,
they had this motocross track, and it was outside of the little soccer stadium that had a Speedway track called Kings Park. And so they would have this intermission race, which was basically, I think it was anything without a clutch was in one race, and anything with a clutch was in another race. So if you on a KX60, you were getting hosed by some guy on a 500. But I remember we would do our local club race, and then we would hear the sprint cars going and the Aussie sidecar, saloon cars, Speedway bikes. And my dad's like, all right, time to go over there, because they would give out like a couple $100 to the winner. My dad's like, time to pay for our travel money for next event, hotel and gas. So we'd pull in, do our little exhibition, and I'd always win and make a couple $100. But I've never actually ridden a Speedway bike, but I have done Speedway, flat track. A lot of people don't know this even, but in America, the first year they had sort of the official national supermoto championship. They had a final round in Vegas, like a winner take all, and I won it. Beat Kurt Nickel as well.
Oh yeah, I remember he did about that as well. Quite a few of the riders did that, didn't they?
Yeah, I won the unlimited class. It was
didn't know you did that.
Entry for, but on the old 525, I think it was blown out to like a 540. But it was fun. But yeah, so I love supermoto. I love, to be honest, I love anything. I've told people anything, if it's got an engine and wheels, I'm totally into it.
Yeah.
I've raced an off-road stadium truck once before. I was fast, but landed upside down like a turtle.
Balls out.
Ran out of talent. Yeah, again, I love road racing. I love dirt. I would love Speedway. I feel like when it comes to racing, I'm kind of a natural at it. If I get in a shifter kart, I'm good. If I get in a sports car, I'm good. If I get on a super bike, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm the same. I like karts or anything like that. Karting.
So yeah, I love that stuff. I'm actually rubbing my hands right now. You can't see.
That's it.
I was just because we were talking about it. I said, look, I'm getting old and sore and I'm decrepit, but we were literally looking at shifter karts on Offer Up the other day, because I was like, they actually built a new cool track not far from here. And I said,
I'm like,
hey, Dev.
I could be a race.
Well, because I thought my daughter's actually a bit of a natural herself.
Is she?
She's a girly girl around her mom, but she's also, a bit of a tomboy sometimes. But like my go-karting places, she's literally, a couple times ago we went, she was the fastest, and she had the fastest time of the week. And my son doesn't handle that very well when it's. And I'm sitting there going, I was second. I told my son, I'm like, you suck. You were third. I'm like, I would a weight ratio. Like, that's how you guys beat me. But it's I love racing in general.
Yeah, same here, mate. 100% like that as well. What are you like for time, Grant? I appreciate your time. We've had 2.5 hours. I do appreciate your time, mate, my friend.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
We'll have to do it again as well, because I didn't even ask you half of my stuff. We'll have to do another one. That'll be all right at some point.
There's a weird thing that keeps happening when I do interviews is it always goes longer than expected. And I'm like, I don't know. It must be the interviewer, not me.
Because my wife always goes to me, oh, do you know much about this guy? Is he gonna be like, because obviously some of the guys, even like all the big names, some of them don't talk as well as others.
Yeah, they're short, huh?
Yeah, that's it. And I said, no. I said, Grant's proper professional. I said he's really good with details and everything. I've listened to all his obviously interviews and stuff on the trackside, so I knew it was going to be good.
I also
So
like
yeah,
banter and stories, and
yeah,
you know, the fact that you wanted me on was kind of to relive all these things, and
mm,
some things have been said before,
yeah,
and some things probably haven't been heard, or like, oh,
yeah.
remind me
I
of
didn't
this
know a lot of that stuff you
story.
said, and I thought I knew quite a lot about you. So that was interesting. I love that. It's nice to hear some of these stories.
I've been looking out the window. Just a little fun fact: there's a hawk in my yard that caught a squirrel, and it's pretty interesting. I know we
Go
got
on.
the.
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like. You can't see it, but it's past the Christmas trees in the distance. He's on the ground, but it's like a little bit of nice little nature up here. So
Nice weather. Nice weather going on over there. It's not quite the same in the UK as you can imagine.
yeah, you know, trust me, I've been there. I know. I do prefer t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. That's my
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I'm also
yeah.
from Durban, and if you've ever been there, it's it's humid even in winter. Like it doesn't get cold. So
Mm,
that's why I said when I moved to Europe, it was a freaking massive shock.
massive shock.
I still remember going to the tracks and going, I can't believe that this is fun for them. Slopping around in the mud, destroying their bike, spending their own money, and they're stoked on this.
Mm.
I was like, how do they enjoy it? But
That's why I always think it's amazing as well, like yourselves and Greg, where you come right over the other side of the world and then you have to adapt to everyone else's world, as it were. That's a hard thing to do as well, especially as a young kid. It must be a
yeah,
grow up seriously quick.
well, yeah, that but again, it's a career move you've made.
Mm,
I'm more talking about the guy that decides I'm going to spend all my money. Like even when I came over and did Farley Castle the one year, I had a bad
mm,
wrist to begin with. This wrist has given me issues. I think I've mentioned in the story. I've broken
yeah,
it
yeah.
times and have plates, but and it's the throttle hand, so it gets really
I
sensitive.
know.
Pump. But anyway, I sucked. It rained, but I was just really enjoying seeing. I mean, I saw some incredible motorcycles.
Mm,
My dad was like, they only made like a couple hundred of those, and it's pissing rain, and these guys go out and destroy it, and we're just watching, going,
mm,
this is hard to watch. But I must say, I really, really respect like the British with their racing history. Like even like Silverstone is
mm,
owned by the racing British Drivers Racing Club. You
mm,
know, you go to these vintage races, and you know, I'm hearing from people, well, the professional side is actually dropping, but the vintage side is grown, and
mm,
it's really cool. You know, the English have always been pioneers, and
mm.
um, you know, from Triumph days, and now we got Triumph coming back into motocross after all these years. Is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
We just need BSA back, and we're good.
That's it, BSA. Bring back that retro MSR kit as well.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Thor.
Yeah. The Thor one would
It
definitely
could be a
sell.
thing there.
Those colors are cool.
Yeah, cool, mate. Yeah, brilliant. I appreciate your time, Grant. That was awesome.
Time.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
I've got to chase some of your buddies as well. I've got to try and chase Greg.
I'll put in a good word for you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Will do.
We'll catch up again soon. I'd like to do another one with you. It'd be amazing. Thank you, Grant.
100%.
Thank you for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
See you, everyone.
Thank you, mate. Cheers, buddy. Legend. What a legend. Mr. Grant Langston. What a rider he was. Legend. Love to get him back on again. We'll get that everywhere. Hopefully, Grant can get a word in with his hero as well, isn't it? His buddy Greg Albertine. I'd been love to get Greg Albertine on. I did. In actual fact, I might even show you guys. Yeah, that was cool as well. I got to race one of his buddies from back in the day in topless. That was a day. So it's cool to get to beat him at the end of that weekend. He was so quick. But I pulled one out of the bag for the end of the weekend. I actually wheeled the whole track as well. Probably after I did that. I nearly thought, should I get this? I've got pictures of me and him racing together, me and topless, but I thought too interested in listening to the man. He told us some cool stories as well. There's quite a few stories in there I didn't realise, and he said quite a few interesting things as well. So it'd be interesting to see what people say once they get to see it. This interview. Lee, you're going to do the sidecar cross World GP Foxing May Bank Holiday weekend? I'm not sure, Callum. Hi, Patrick. Hope you're good, buddy. Thanks, Mark. We'll try and get this out there to the race fans after this. It's a lot of cool things he said in there. Didn't know quite a lot of that either. Hope you're good, Patrick, buddy. Got that Neville Bradshaw shirt. We should have got that out for this, shouldn't we? Even though it was an Irish top, but I'm not sure about that, Callum. Last year I did the race commentary at Canada Heights for the British Championship, the sidecar cross. That was pretty cool. So I'm hoping to go there again this year. So hopefully I can get to do the commentary again at Canada Heights this year. That was really cool. So I've got, look, a few of you might have these from Vets Foxhill, but signed Mr Bradshaw. Oh, also I've got to do a quick shout out for this man. Shirts are flying everywhere now. Mr Wildman Willis, the number 93 there. He's always rode in my reunions. I've raced the man back in the day, and he's still going strong. I don't think he'd mind me saying in his 50s, he's still kicking ass. But at the moment, bless him, he's had a big get off, unfortunately. He's always flat out, Mr. Wildman Willis. Oh, so that's it's always the opposite. The man, number 93, always flat out on the two-stroke, 125. He's been currently injured, so he's resting up at the moment. So I just wanted to send him some love and our best wishes, and hopefully he's back up and good. I've seen him a couple of times down the Oxford Speedway, so I'm sure I'll get to see him down there before anything. Like the old Rob Herring, the old Castrol bottoms, pretty cool. There's my buddy, Mr. Cole Balfield, did the Speedway and the motocross. We raced motocross together. I always said to him, I really always wished I could afford or have a shoey helmet. So when he finished riding, he said I could have his. So might have added a couple of stickers there. I'm not sure what that one is. So here's Mr. Balfield. Cheers, buddy. He rode for the Buxton Hitmen as well. Speedway. I always like to get that out as well. Yeah, that was when I had a quick, cheeky little comeback ride. Who the hell is that guy? Oh, got to get these off to my buddy as well. Sending them all out to him, Mark. So yeah, massive love to you all. Thank you very much for coming on. I'll get this out there to all the fans of motocross. So that was cool to get the man, Grant Langston. Super cool to get another world champion on, AMA Supercross and outdoor motocross champion as well. Done it all. Another South African. Just like, we've had some great riders come over from there. Rob Herring, Paul Cooper, Ryan Hunt. I think we mentioned them all before, didn't we? Neville Bradshaw. So many of those riders that have come over from there. And Colin Dugmore as well, wasn't it? Was another one. I remember him doing a lot of the European Supercrosses and stuff like that. And I swear I remember him wearing a luminous yellow shirt and stuff like that. Back in the day were always pretty cool. But yeah, I need to get back on these live interviews. Oh, that was what I was going to show you, wasn't it? So earlier, when I went on the Instagram to advertise I was doing it, hope I'm going to be able to find this now. On my MX Speedway Memories Instagram. Oh, I've got a thumbs up from Doug Henry on there. There you go. Cheers, Doug. You should check it out, by the way, as well. There you go. There's my Instagram across Speedway Memories. Check it out. But I did something I wrote on there to do with the man. I advertised about Mr. Langston, look, and I saw in the comments. This is the sort of thing that gets me excited, weird stuff like this. But I put in there, look, And after I do this one, I'd love to get Greg Albertine, and I won't lie, my ultimate of all time would be to see Jeremy McGrath, which I've told him multiple times, and he sees my messages. So one day, fingers crossed. So I put in there that top of my list after this would be Jeremy McGrath, and let's have a look. So I was thinking, where is it? Where is it? Please tell me I'm not going to be able to see this on. Oh, there we go. Oh, where's it gone? Anyway, I had a notification, which I can't bloody find now. Of course I can't now when I need it quickly. But I had a notification anyway. And Jeremy McGrath liked that comment, so watch this space. That has always been, won't lie, I always say straight, but yeah, one of my ultimate interviews would have been with Jeremy McGrath. I know there's loads of others I still have to get, like James Stewart and Ricky Carmichael, Chad Reed, Philip Oto's, a few riders, but I mean, Jeremy McGrath would be my ultimate. I was actually looking through my things, but I can't believe all the riders I've spoken to. Crazy. But Grant Langston's been mint, and hopefully he'll hook me up with Mr Albertine, his buddy. It sounds like they all live around the same area. I've got Ricky Johnson's number, so I might have to ask him if he can put word in. Sounds like there's a few legends hanging around that area. But yeah, we'll see what we can do. And I'm going to crack on now with my Speedway ones as well, because there's loads of legends I need to speak to on there. I've got to rearrange that one with Dave Morton. I've been real weird and away from everything with my bizarre anxieties. The longer I leave it, the more I can't do it. It's that type of thing. But I would like to get back into it, actually. I feel a lot better now I've actually just done one. I'm not worrying about it and stuff like that. You think, oh, I don't even know how to work it all again now. It's been 5-6 months. But I enjoyed that, and Grant Langston's very, very detailed and gave us some really cool information there. So I really enjoyed that, actually. And I'll have to get him on again. I'm in contact with him, so that's cool. And hopefully he can hook me up. Mr Albertine would be cool. So much love, as I always leave it, with Mr David Ashby, my dad. It's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. Much love all. Ciao Bella. Cheers.